Are the lemon trees going to be a big thing today? Are we seriously going to be talking about fantasy world like botany? I mean. Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. Today we have a slightly different episode. We're not reviewing a book or a movie or a chapter. We're actually going over the popular R plus L equals J and D theories. And joining me today from the forums will be White Raven.
Brett, White Raven on the forums.
Peter Slalish 15.
What's up? It's Peter. Peter Slalish 15 on the forums.
Blue-Eyed Queen.
Hi, it's Casey, Blue-Eyed Queen on the forums.
And Nadia.
Hello everyone, this is Nadia.
And I'm Shaggydog on the forums. And so today we're going to be going over this from
What's
a little
your
bit of
name
a...
in real life?
I don't have a name in real life. And Scott in real life. So we're going to be going over this from a little bit of a linear perspective. Does anybody want to give a shout out or anything before we get started?
Shout out to Mother Nature for being so goddamn cold. So we all want to stay inside and podcast.
Hear you there. I do want to give a shout out actually to, it rhymes with Sleek on the forums, who had the great idea of putting up a poll to see as far as what people's opinions were. And apparently, not surprisingly, overwhelmingly, people think it's R plus L equals J, as opposed to R plus L equals D. Actually, it was 75%.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like how they just proved Einstein was right about gravitational waves. Big surprise, Einstein was right again. But let's get started here. So we're going to go through this with a linear perspective, and we're going back, as far as I can tell, the earliest beginnings of this starts when Jaehaerys II weds Prince Aerys and Princess Rhaella, because he's told by a woods witch that that will produce the prince that was promised. And from A Dance with Dragons, we have a quote from Barristan. Your grandsire commanded it. A woods witch had told him that the prince that was promised would be born of their line. Which I think we're pretty much all agreed that the woods witch would be the ghost of High Heart. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
75%. No.
That sounds right.
Okay, and how literal do we think we should take of their line versus of the Union? Is that too nitpicky? Like, does of the Union mean it's an immediate descendant, or of their line could refer to like somebody 50 generations down?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just has to be in the line.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to mean that it was coming on. It was like, coming on down the train tracks a little bit. Not right now.
I agree. I think these are, they're all open to interpretation, and we'll figure out what they actually mean in the end, but I think it's open to whoever's in the line.
True. Do we think the prince that was promised and Azor Ahai are the same prophecy, or refers to the same person, or is it different prophecies and different people?
Hard to tell.
I think it's possible that they're different, but I think that it's basically the same thing. But again, it's possible that they're different.
Yeah. I think they're different.
I do too.
I think they come from totally different areas of Planetos. Is that what we call it?
Yeah.
Prince that was promised is more of a Targaryen thing, right? It's more of a Westerosi thing, whereas Azor Ahai is we only hear it being mentioned by Melisandre, I think.
Yeah, it's like
so it's more of an Eastern thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think if you relate it back to our world, there's all these different religions with all these different stories about the same flood. So I feel like it's kind of along the same lines, but they're all obviously different things that they come from.
Yeah, different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's supposed to mean what you're talking about. I think it's probably similar legends, just from different culture, just about the same thing. But I agree with Nadia. I think it's gonna manifest into two different people.
Yeah, exactly. I think Prince that was promised points more towards Dany, whereas Azor Ahai is probably Jon.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pointing at two separate people that has two separate prophecies.
Do you think, like, the born of their line thing was just, like, the ghost of High Heart hedging her bets? Like, no, it'll be of your line. Just keep waiting. It'll happen. So nobody can tell her she's wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if she said, oh, by the way, it's the firstborn. Okay, great. Now we know who it is exactly. But yeah, that's a good point. If you get too specific, you can't leave it vague enough to make it come true, right?
Right. She's just talking shit. She doesn't know anything. Ghost of High Heart.
Okay. Let's move on to the tragedy of Summerhall, which happens in 259 AC. And we have basically a lot of death. King Aegon V, who's also Aegon the Unlikely, or Egg from the Duncan Eggtails, dies. So does Sir Duncan the Tall and Prince Duncan. Now, in this event, this puts Jaehaerys on the throne, and also we see Rhaegar being born that same day. And Maester Aemon thinks the birth of Rhaegar is associated with the fulfillment of the prophecy for the prince that was promised. And he tells Sam Tarly in A Feast for Crows, no one ever looked for a girl. It was the prince that was promised. Rhaegar, I thought. The error crept in from translation. Dragons are neither male nor female. Daenerys is the one, born amidst salt and smoke. So we seem to have, Maester Aemon making a mistake, but jumping to the conclusion initially that it was Rhaegar. Any thoughts on Rhaegar? Initially, do you think that was a sensible guess, or do you think it was just like a bad, judgment on Aemon's point?
Well, I think it was a decent guess. I mean, Rhaegar was good at everything. He seemed like the type of person that would be like your stereotypical hero. So
and
I can see why.
For a long time, Rhaegar was the only child, right? Rhaegar was like the only living child, so it would be assumed that this was the prince.
There's a big age gap between Viserys and Rhaegar.
Yeah, there's 17 years there.
It's a long time.
And as far as badass births go, he's got a dope one for sure. It's like you're just looking for a Targ to be born with some kind of awesome circumstance. He kind of has that on lock. But yeah, definitely messed that up a little bit. Sorry, Aemon, you're still the best.
Okay, and yeah, actually there is a lot that goes wrong for them further down the road. Aerys and Rhaella try another 8 times for children, and something goes wrong every single time over the next 11 years. She has a miscarriage in 263 AC, a second miscarriage in 264 AC, gives birth to Shahina Targaryen, who is stillborn in 267 AC. She births Prince Daeron Targaryen in 269, but he only lives half a year. She has another stillbirth in 270 of a child that they never revealed the name or gender of. Another miscarriage.
Dragon baby.
It was all scaly. They didn't want to, make that one public knowledge.
Is that a penis or a tail? I can't tell. It's nothing.
Another miscarriage in 271. She births Aegon Targaryen in 272, who's born 2 months premature, and he dies the following year in 273. And then she births Jaehaerys Targaryen in 274, who dies later that same year. So, yeah, Westerosi Planned Parenthood totally sucks, even if you're wealthy.
That's a lot of children that they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That is a lot.
Are you thinking that they were doing it to kind of fulfill the 3 heads thing with Rhaegar being one of them, I guess?
Or they just wanted another child?
I think Rhaegar wanted to be the prince that was promised, so he kept poisoning them. Yeah,
offing the competition.
That's why he was so broody. He's like, I've killed so
Except he
many
didn't kill off Viserys, which was...
Well, he knew he was
terrible.
crazy. He's like, nobody's gonna listen to that fucker.
Does anybody know when Aerys gets captured? Like before, he was like not as crazy before that, but then after that he was pretty crazy.
Yeah, Duskendale?
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, when was that?
That happens in 277.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with the miscarriages.
No, all of these pregnancies occur prior to the events of Duskendale. And let's actually go a little bit further into Aerys, and we'll get to Duskendale in a little bit, because that actually is pretty significant. It changes a lot of events. So yeah, throughout all this time, Rhaegar grows up, and he changes his direction in life. Barristan says to Daenerys in A Storm of Swords, "As a young boy, the Prince of Dragonstone was bookish to a fault. He was reading so early that men said Queen Rhaella must have swallowed some books in a candle whilst he was in her womb. Rhaegar took no interest in the play of other children. The maesters were awed by his wits, but his father's knights would jest sourly that Baelor the Blessed had been born again. Until one day Prince Rhaegar found something in his scrolls that changed him. No one knows what it might have been. Only the boy suddenly appeared early one morning in the yard as the knights were donning their steel. He walked up to Sir Willem Darry, the master of arms, and said, "I will require a sword and armor. It seems I must be a warrior." And he actually ended up getting knighted at age 17. We don't know the exact date, but...
Did he find the prophecy of the prince that was promised, or Azor Ahai? Is that was what drove him to learn how to become a warrior?
It's possible.
I think, like, when he read this and decided to change his life, he stopped offing his brothers and sisters. Because he got knighted at age 17, and how old is Viserys? 17? Like, they're 17 years apart, right?
They're 17 years apart, so Viserys actually isn't born until 276.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
he stopped trying to off him.
It's funny because Rhaegar has this sort of background like Stannis has in the first book of Game of Thrones, where he's this really influential character that is just sort of absent as well. I mean, is he sort of a hero in the story? Is he kind of a villain, or just another crazy Targaryen?
I don't think his
about
full
Rhaegar?
story's been told yet.
Rhaegar's an absolute badass.
Yeah, but is that because he was an actual badass, or because, his legend kind of grew in the telling, and a lot of people look back on him fondly?
Both, because he just dominated people, and then also, I mean, yeah, I think he had a lot of like the kind of Jaime stuff going on. He's like got the really awesome looking figure. He's like, I don't know, he's got the nice looking armor and everything. Then he like wins the Harrenhal tourney, and everybody's like, "Oh damn, who's this guy? He's gonna be pretty awesome."
I think they all knew.
But Rhaegar also had like the Mad Targaryen tendencies. I mean, he was the one who sort of kidnapped Lyanna. It doesn't matter if he kidnapped her or not. That's what everyone thought, right? And it's basically what tore the realm apart.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter what his intentions were. His actions basically resulted in a long war, which basically ended Targaryen rule.
Well, it really depends on how it came about, because it could have been... I've read some stuff where people actually theorized that he was saving her from his father. If she was the Knight of the Laughing Tree and she took off and he was like, "Go find her," and somebody found out who she was, like he could have saved her from whatever he had in mind, because he was just straight up burning people at that point. So he actually saved her, but it's hard to get word to Brandon Stark, who's a little hot-headed, what's going down. So he goes straight to the king, like, have him release my sister.
Well, also, we don't know if Lyanna really wanted to marry Robert either.
No. And Ned never really has any
Well,
ill
see,
will towards him.
that's not the point. The point is that everyone thought that Rhaegar had kidnapped Lyanna, right?
Right.
Right.
It doesn't matter if she went of her own free will.
Yeah, it's more of a communication error.
And Rhaegar should have been, if he was that intelligent a person, he should have been able to see that that was what was going to happen, considering that his father had already gone mad.
They were blinded by love.
Or blinded by prophecy.
I mean, I think John's a pretty intelligent person, but he doesn't see his stabbing coming.
That's true.
That's true. Maybe they thought they were just hoping for the best, and no one will really go to war over all this. And then
Or did he see his stabbing coming?
He was told about it.
Well, to be fair, he didn't see the first one coming. Several of the other ones after that, though, he totally saw coming. So, and he did nothing, by the way.
He did something. He the first one he like pulled away and then took the knife away from him.
Okay, fair enough. And the rest he just
Calls
kind
out for Ghost. He did something.
Yeah. I suppose he bled on their black cloaks, so that's doing something. They'll have to do laundry after, and that might not come out easily. So,
anyways,
focus.
yeah, let's get back on topic here. Okay, so moving on to 276, we have the birth of Viserys, and I actually looked and tried to find out if anyone was burned alive or sacrificed or anything like that. But Viserys actually lives. So does anyone have any notion if aside from non-poisoning?
Damn it!
Relatives?
Waiting for you to walk right into that. How dare you cut me off before I talk?
Anyone have any notions if there was any other human sacrifices or mass deaths or anything like that caused Viserys to live, or was it just blind luck?
I would go
I
with
think it
just
just
it
worked.
happened.
Okay. Okay, and then moving on to 277, we have the Defiance of Duskendale, and this is where things really start going down with King Ares and descending into madness. A quote from the World Book of Ice and Fire. Captivity in Duskendale had started whatever sanity had remained to Ares II. From that day forth, the king's madness reigned unchecked, growing worse with every passing year. The Darklands had dared lay hands upon his person, shoving him roughly, stripping him of his royal raiment, even daring to strike him. After his release, King Ares would no longer allow himself to be touched, even by his own servants. Uncut and unwashed, his hair grew ever longer and more tangled, whilst his fingernails lengthened and thickened into grotesque yellow talons.
It would have been cooler if it was fingers.
It would
I
have
was
been
about to
much.
say that's really gross.
Yes, very, very gross.
Yeah, and it's right about this time that he hires on Varys as well. Also from the World Book, convinced the small folk and lords were plotting against his life and fearing that even Queen Rhaella and Prince Rhaegar might be part of these plots, he reached across the sea and imported a eunuch named Varys to serve as his spy master, reasoning that only a man without friends, family, or ties in Westeros could be relied upon for the truth. And we know that Varys is backing Aegon, or Phaegon as it would be. Do you think this was his plot from the beginning?
Varys? Like what? I don't.
Oh, like when he
even
came
under-
in to be his.
Yeah.
I think this is before Aegon was ever born, right? So
Yeah, but
Even if it's Phaegon, I don't think he was born yet either.
yeah,
he wasn't. But do you think his initial goal was to, get the Targaryens out of power initially? Has he been working against them the whole time?
I think
hard
that's
to say.
possible. We really don't know, but I would say it's possible.
Like, I don't even know how the king would have found out about Varys and his abilities. Like, is this just why would he trust whoever told him about him? Do you know what I mean? I feel like he wouldn't trust anybody. It's
see,
just
but
weird.
Varys was doing the same thing over in Essos, right? He was basically a spy already.
Mm.
He had this network of what does he call them?
Little birds.
Little birds.
Little birds, right? He had basically that's where he perfected his network of little birds in Essos, and somebody must have either recommended him or Eris heard about him from somewhere, and decided he could use it. And see, the Red Keep is perfect for a network like that because there are so many hidden passages and everything.
Mm.
How do you think Varys found them?
Little birds.
Probably he lost a few little birds on the way, but eventually he managed to get a reasonable map or something.
It's just like the mines. If the bird dies, don't go in.
Hey, this kid made it back. Draw me a map. Okay. But it does seem like that there was the king was suspecting his wife and Rhaegar of plotting against him. Do we think that's likely? That because he's starting to lose his shit, that they were maybe thinking about usurping him or taking him out?
I'm guessing like every king has to kind of suspect that a little bit. Especially after what happened to him.
Yeah, I mean, when someone has like extreme trauma like that, there's something bad usually happens to them, whether it's like paranoia or PTSD or whatever.
Do you think Rhaegar could have helped set the whole thing up? Because remember, he doesn't trust Barristan. Is it Barristan that he doesn't trust as much as the other Knights of the Kingsguard?
Yeah, there seems to also be a bit of a division within the Kingsguard. Because after he marries Elia of Dorne in 280, the tourney at Harrenhal is announced. And actually, let me bring up the quote here. Yeah, from the Kingbreaker chapter in A Dance with Dragons, Barristan recalls, "The Prince of Dragonstone had never trusted him as he had trusted Arthur Dane. Harrenhal was proof of that, the year of the false spring. The memory was still bitter. Old Lord Went had announced the tourney shortly after a visit from his brother, Sir Oswald Went of the Kingsguard. With Varys whispering in the ear, King Aerys became convinced his son was conspiring to depose him, that Went's tourney was but a ploy to give Rhaegar a pretext for meeting with as many great lords as could be brought together."
So maybe Rhaegar doesn't trust him as much because he got Barristan got the king out of the jam.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously he's still for the king, whereas the other ones, maybe they back him.
I guess it brings up the question of, if you're in the Kingsguard and the king is, starting to go crazy and no longer being suitable to rule, what do you do then? Is he king until he dies, or do you, say, okay, look, you're you're mentally not able to rule the realm, it's time for the prince to step up and take over.
I would
Well,
say
Barrett-
he's king until he dies, and you put him down.
Well, Barristan's a pretty...
Jamie dilemma.
What? You can go.
I said the Jamie dilemma 2.0, but go ahead.
Well, it's really 1.0 because this is the king.
1.0, yeah. Right.
Well, Barristan's he seems pretty honorable, so I feel like despite like any like qualms he has about someone who's not mentally well ruling, he's gonna stay by the king.
Yeah, I think he would have stayed by Joffrey, even if they hadn't kicked him out. I think he would have stayed by him.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, so Rhaegar obviously was up to some, like, really shady shit with this tournament. Like, we know that. It's just a question of whether it was, like, shady towards him not thinking Aerys was fit to rule anymore, or more aimed towards just the whole kidnapping of Lyanna stuff. Like,
I don't think he went into it with that in mind.
Oh, I totally...
Yeah, I think that
I'm
happened
gonna-
afterwards. Like,
I'm gonna throw a big tourney to scout the highborn ladies of the realm and pick the one I like best. In a way, I can see it's kind of like throwing a party to meet people and invite your friends along, but I don't know if it's the same level.
I mean, the reason I say that is because I totally am of the opinion that Rhaegar cheated at the tournament to win it, and he had a certain goal of that in mind. So, like, if you think that he, like, cheated to win the tournament, maybe, I mean, and so in my perspective, if you're gonna go to all that preparation to cheat and win, probably were the one who, like, set it up in the first place and stuff and convinced the Wentz to, like, make that happen.
Well, also, is Aegon born yet? Like real Aegon.
But by the time the tourney rolls around, yes.
So at that
he has
point,
2 children.
So at that point, Elia's pretty sick, so he may like be looking for someone to take on the 3 heads of the dragon thing, like the undying prophecy that Dany sees.
Yeah, that's exactly
But
what I was gonna say.
It's possible.
Yeah, that's right when he's like, there has to be a third.
I don't know. To me, it seems like he was trying to plot some sort of bloodless revolution. Like, have this big tourney where all the lords can get together. Because if you look at the alliances of the day, you have the Starks, the Tullys, the Aarons, and Baratheons all intermarrying, and that's not like it's a backroom deal. It's not like it's, secret goings-on. These are public betrothals that everyone's aware of. So it seems like maybe they were setting up this kind of alliance to, keep the royals in check, possibly. That way, if they did something, no problem. We've got each other's backs, and, none of us are going to roast alive, so to speak.
Well, I guess it could be both, in that he's looking for another mate and he's trying to bring everybody together. He's like, who wants to have my new dragon baby? And they're like, oh, guess we have to seal this pact somehow.
Are we thinking that Rhaegar is actually at this point looking for another wife because Elia is probably not going to have more children, and he needs 3 at least?
Hell yes. Absolutely.
It makes sense that he would be.
But, okay.
I just think also people overlook sometimes, like, when he wins the tournament, he just happens to have those, like, blue winter roses that are Lyanna's, like, favorite thing, just, like, right there. Like, what?
I think it might have more to do, like, when she doesn't show up, the king asks him to go look for her. Like, he may have found her.
Right.
And then, maybe he asked questions about her or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there could have been more to it than we know. Obviously, there's more to it than we know.
Right. I don't know. I think it's just strange to have that, like, bouquet of flowers just, like, right there. That specific one.
Yeah, but that's like a Westerosi tradition, isn't it? Like, the winner of the tourney gets to crown, the Queen of Love and Beauty or whatever?
I think you
Yeah,
meant
that's
specifically the winter rose.
Winter roses?
Yeah, the winter roses.
The blue
They,
winter.
and don't they only grow in the north?
Yes.
So he finds out who she is, and he's like, you, ride all night, go get me some blue roses.
No, I'm just saying I think that there was just a lot of planning there. I think there was some pretext.
Possibly, I guess. I mean, I can't argue against it.
Possibly, but also, I mean, at the same time, yeah, it's rare, but this is kind of like the big tourney of the era, isn't it? Like, it's a chance for, the wealthy to show off how much wealth they have. So why wouldn't you kind of, sort of one up, all the other tournaments that have gone on and, show off like how much better you are than everybody else? Doesn't that sort of like raise you as the host of the tourney in status if you can get something a little bit more rare or have like a grander reward?
I'm not sure what you mean by reward.
Meaning if this is like a big tourney and it's designed to bring all the High Lords together as Varys suspected.
Yeah.
Doesn't pulling out all the stops, like throwing the biggest wedding or throwing the biggest like ceremony, having the most pomp and circumstance, having the most impressive stuff. Doesn't that make a little bit more sense to kind of ensure that they're all going to show up? That it's going to
okay.
It's going to be the one that nobody wants to miss.
Right. So all the High Lords are going to be there.
Right.
Hell, even the Starks went, and they don't do the nightly things.
That's true. And actually, that's one of the meetings we should probably talk about. We have Howland Reed in the Starks meeting, as we got in the Tale of the Night of the Laughing Tree, and we also have Ashara Dane meeting the Starks as well.
Da-da-da.
Go ahead, Peter. We know you want to.
No, I'll wait. I'll bring it around later on. Don't worry. It'll be more appropriate later.
I can't wait till it comes back around.
Yeah.
Keep the listeners on the edge of their seat. I want them to listen to the end.
All right. Well, I mean, seriously, how significant do we think Ashara Dane is to this whole the whole aspect? Is she a person of high importance, or just sort of a footnote in history, or just a fling for one of the Starks?
I think she's just been thrown in there sort of as an alternate, choice for who Jon's mother is. But yeah, she was probably Brandon was probably the father of her baby. That's what I think, at least.
Yes. That's exactly why she's super important. But we just have a difference of opinion about
the baby died.
Who the baby is.
I don't know.
The baby died.
I don't know.
As did Ashara Dane.
We'll wait till we get back around.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, and then we also have Rhaegar and Lyanna meeting. And then we have the moment where all the smiles die, where Rhaegar marches his horse past his own wife Elia Martell and lays the laurel of blue winter roses in Lyanna's lap. So any motives specifically that you guys want to throw out for Rhaegar picking Lyanna? Like, was it just like he was interested in her, or was there more to it, do you guys think?
I think there was more to it.
I subscribe to the theory that he found out she was the one that rode against the others. If she was the one who did it, she was the one who rode against the others to teach them their lesson, and then he kind of fell in love with her because of that, because of how strong she was.
I agree with that too.
I think he just saw some sick birthing hips and knew where to go.
See, but the thing is,
they can't have been that sick. She died.
All right,
okay, so Rhaegar crowns Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty, right? Mm-hmm. That to me is like a declaration of something, because all of the major lords in Westeros are present, right?
Right.
So giving Lyanna that crown is very, very important, right?
Who do you guys
especially because he's ignoring his own wife.
It's very public. Like,
think the Mountain gave it to, or not the Mountain, the Hound? Did he give someone the crown of love and beauty?
No, but see, this is the Crown Prince, right?
Yeah.
This is the Crown Prince whose wife is present, and he gives the crown of love and beauty to somebody else. That it has to be something that's very, very important, right? Because if he just intended to have like a fling with Lyanna, right, he would try to keep that hidden, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but even if she was just very important, regardless, he could have just been like, "You're great, but we have to keep this a secret." So
yeah, exactly,
it could have ended up like that, but he had to make it public for some reason.
Yeah, so why was he making it so public?
I don't know.
Well, Targaryens have married more than one person before, so I don't think it'd be out of the ordinary for him to have another wife.
Well, in that time, it was a thing in the past, but I think in more recent times it wasn't really a thing.
Actually, White Raven brings up a good point.
The first couple of kings actually married multiple wives, but nobody after that.
Yeah, but White Raven brings up a good point. Rhaegar did sort of have an obsession with Aegon the Conqueror. I mean, he named his son after Aegon. He also named his oldest daughter Visenya. Rhaenys. And after that, so I mean, did he possibly think that, oh, hey, if it worked for the guy who conquered the Seven Kingdoms, it should work well enough for me? And it would kind of make sense if he thought to marry Lyanna, because she was from the Stark household, part of that other Northern Alliance. And yeah, sure, you're pissing off Robert Baratheon, but surely the other Great Lords might have thought, well, you know what, this might work out best for everybody. We can avoid open war, we can kind of have a say in what goes on, depose the Mad King, and sort of getting things sorted out.
It does make sense. I mean, he's got Dorne, which is in the south, and if he gets the Starks, which are in the north, I mean, he got the opposite of the Starks, I guess. But if it had worked out, he would have got the Starks in the north and King's Landing in the middle. So I don't know. Maybe it was a plan. I don't know for sure. That would be like that would be more toward Peter's line of thinking, I guess, if he thought of it going into it.
I'm just telling you, he had to have. That specific. It's so specific. Like, again, I've said my piece. I'll get back to it later, I guess.
Maybe he just came down from visiting the wall before the tournament. He's like, wow, these are pretty flowers. I'm just going to pick them.
All right. I mean, yeah.
And they last the whole way back.
That's literally the only other explanation that I'll accept, is that he was just randomly in the north, and he randomly liked how they looked, and so he randomly picked them for his...
What if they were like with the Starks as they were coming down?
It's too much of a coincidence.
This is the stuff I can't wait to find out, and I wish it would be more
I
forthcoming.
Do you think that we'll actually ever find like these specific things out, though?
Yes.
I actually do think a lot more of this will be specific, just because it almost needs to be. I don't think we're going to get all the information we want, but I do think we'll get more of the Harrenhal thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that,
I think
too.
it's too important for it not to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at some point the truth has to come out. Same thing with Summerhall as well.
Summerhall's a
Although
little
I think
tougher.
Summerhall is probably
nobody
going to be
will die.
revealed in Dunk and Egg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Harrenhal, there's too many people that were alive when it happened for like other stuff not to be able to come out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already got the what was that lady's name? The one that hates Ned, that
Lady
wants to
Dustin.
steal his bones. Lady Dustin.
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
what-
Barbary Dustin.
Yeah, I mean,
Barbary
she
as
knows all
well.
about the Harrenhal stuff. So I mean, we already got some information there.
That's a good point. All right, so about a fortnight after the tourney, Rhaegar takes Lyanna. Thoughts? Did she run off with him? Did he kidnap her? Were they married in secret?
I don't know. Like, all of the above. I don't know.
I think he may have married her only because, like I said, Targaryens are strong like that. They just marry more than one person if they want, because that's what they do.
I guess that might make sense because Ned had a statue of Lyanna in the crypt. So if she had, attained sort of a higher status, she
That's a queen statue.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would make more sense.
Didn't Bran see a man and a woman in front of the weirwood tree?
I know what you're talking about.
When he eats the weirwood paste and he goes into he sees the tree's memories. He sees this man and woman. Could it possibly have been Rhaegar and Lyanna saying their vows in front of a heart tree?
Suppose it could have been. I'd need to go back and actually read it. I haven't read it in so long.
I know, I don't exactly remember the scene either, but...
That's something we should look up at some point and get back to.
Because that's where we get, Lyanna fighting Benjen. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess that would make sense because if, they got married by a Septon, then there'd be some Septon running around somewhere that would, have some sort of knowledge of that, or maybe there'd be some sort of, I don't know if there's a birth certificate that they issue, or wedding certificate or anything like that. But there'd be somebody who knows,
It would also make more sense why the Kingsguard would still be there.
Protecting the queen, yeah.
Queen / the heir.
The prince, yeah.
Prince or princess, I'm
At
not going to judge right now.
At this point, Aegon and Rhaenys had been killed, right? When Tower of Joy happened.
Once we get to the Tower of Joy, yes.
Everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Except for Lyanna.
Right. So, moving forward, Brandon doesn't take the news of Lyanna being taken too well, and eventually him and Lord Rickard Stark are executed as traitors by the Mad King, who also demands Ned and the others be turned over to him by Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn refuses, and they end up going to war. Also at an unknown point between then and later, Ashara Dane leaves court in King's Landing and returns home to Starfall. No reason is actually ever given in the book. Do we think it's possibly her pregnancy or something else?
Yeah.
She can see shit about to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd get out of
Or it could be, this is my, I guess, personal theory, that there was a little bit of time before Brandon got executed for them to bang it out. and so they had a crypt baby or a a black sail baby in King's Landing, and so then she had to get that baby out of there. So I don't think she was pregnant. I think she had a child there with.
I don't know if that would be possible. People would know. I could see her getting pregnant and then leaving because.
I guess you just have to know, like, how later is this from the Harrenhal tourney?
It's not even a year later because it's either shortly after
it's
Robert's
much
rebellion
less
begins.
than. I think it's a very short time because I think Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna on when she was on her way back north. He didn't actually take her from Winterfell. He took her from somewhere around the Trident. Not the Trident, maybe the inn at the crossroads or something.
Yeah, Rhaegar takes her within 2 weeks of the turn.
On the way back from Harrenhal, and then Brandon was on his way to marry Catelyn, and he went to King's Landing, so there wasn't much time at all. So if Ashara had gotten pregnant by Brandon, she would not have the baby for like at least 9 months, and Brandon probably died within like a week or so of that event.
Okay,
I don't know how much longer after Harrenhal.
I'll just go with it that she was pregnant and had to leave. Didn't necessarily have a baby yet.
Good call.
Well, that's one of the problems, though, of this story is that Martin kind of doesn't give a lot of specifics on the timeline. Like, Brandon gets jailed, and then he calls for Rickard Stark and some of the other High Lords to show up, and Rickard shows up, so he has... And as far as we know, he wasn't at Harrenhal, so he has to come down from Winterfell. So it's probably, maybe his captivity lasts a month?
Yeah.
At the most. So there certainly is a window of opportunity there and a time frame. And then 282, Robert's Rebellion begins, and along the line, Quentin Chesterfield gets burned alive, and that is a really big aphrodisiac for the Mad King, who impregnates Queen Rhaella. We then move on to the Battle of Trident, Ruby Ford, where Rhaegar gets killed by Robert. And in the House of the Undying, Daenerys sees Rhaegar fall to Robert, and he says a woman's name prior to dying. Any guesses as to the woman's name?
Lyanna.
Has to be. Or Daenerys.
Lyanna really would have pissed him off. He probably would have just bludgeoned his dead body.
I don't know. I think Robert kicked his ass so bad he called out for his mom, but we'll see.
or maybe it was Visenya. He just wanted to have three heads of the dragon, right? And he already had Aegon and Rhaenys, and he was about to have a child, and he was hoping it would be a Visenya. So it could, maybe.
Well, there's also a question as to, like, since it's not specific, whether Dany recognized the name or not. So.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about. I don't know what name it would be if she didn't recognize it, because I feel like she would recognize even Lyanna, but I don't know.
So are we saying there was a third woman in Rhaegar's life?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's one of the prophesized dragons' names.
As he's falling, he's like, Ashara. Like, wait a minute.
That's why she left. All right, so moving along, we have a pregnant Queen Rhaella, Prince Viserys, and Sir Willem Darry fleeing to Dragonstone. We get the sack of King's Landing, the death of the Mad King, Elia Martell and her children, and there's a nice quote from Barristan, who says to Skahaz, Prince Rhaegar had 2 children, Sir Barristan told him. Rhaenys was a little girl, Aegon a babe in arms when Tywin Lannister took King's Landing. His men killed both of them. He served their bloody bodies up in crimson cloaks as a gift for the new king. And I think this is where the suggested body switch or child switch with Aegon and another kid comes up that Varys suggests, that he gets taken off to Essos and raised as young Griff. Thoughts on that? Is that something that probably happened, or is that just bullshit that Varys is just passing off?
I really don't think that's true. I think they both died.
I guess it's possible, but it's hard to believe. I don't know. I mean, one baby looks much like another. Jon does it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if the baby is, like, young enough, you can, like, switch it with another baby. And nobody would, except the parents, would know.
Especially if the mountain's the one retrieving it. It's not coming back looking like it did when he found it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. here's the body of the oldest daughter, here's the body of the princess, and here's the bucket of jam that was the baby. So.
Oh, sad.
No. Oh.
Darwin, we're gonna need more red cloaks.
Do we have something in more of a crimson blood?
I mean,
We'll be
for me,
after we're
it's
done
like-
with it.
I think, I mean, it could be, like, it could have happened. He could be real, but I don't think it's really gonna, like, I don't know. He's still Fagon. Like, he's still gonna, like, I don't know how anybody's
Until proved otherwise, he's Fagon.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, I think the visions to Danny are pretty clear. Like, this dude's not gonna be the real deal. And so, even if he is the real deal, in theory, I think
Well, Tyrion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, he didn't fool Tyrion, but fooled Tyrion. Do you know what I mean? Like, Tyrion wasn't fooled as to who he was supposed
Right.
to be, but
Right.
Portraying.
yeah, portraying. Thank you.
Right.
I don't mind the idea like that he's like a Shara and Benjen's kid, maybe, or not Benjen. Yeah, Benjen. Benjen's getting it done. Kid's got it going on. Brandon.
6-year-old Benjen. Showing his
Whatever.
older brother how it's done.
Yeah.
At the tourney of
He's like, you're not even gonna
Harrenhal.
ask her to dance, you bitch.
Oh, man.
Well, he does tell Jon, before you join the Watch, you better go father a couple of bastards of your own, then think about it, so...
Good point.
That took a turn.
Yeah.
Sorry, but like if that is their kid, I mean, they get the purple eyes from the Dane side. I don't know why Varys would be propping him up so high, though.
Because he's tired of this shit.
And he wants an easy, pliable guy in charge.
Yeah, he's just so. I'd be so fucking finished if I was Varys. You've been like doing all the shit that you can for so long, and like everybody, all these kings that you keep serving, just keep screwing things up.
All these? You mean the 2?
Yeah,
Well, 3, I guess, if you include.
3. Yeah. So I mean, if I was Varys, I'd go off and create my own ruler to come in.
Well, he doesn't have to stay. He doesn't. But you know what I mean? He doesn't have to stick around. I
Right.
don't know what his connection is to to the Westeros.
Right.
We don't really know that yet. Like his motivations, what are they?
Blackfire.
Well, he's lasted through 4 kings so far, so it's pretty good for not
Yeah,
being...
him and Barristan.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay, a bit later on, Rhaella crowns Viserys on Dragonstone. We don't have the exact date and time. Then the siege on Storm End gets lifted by Ned, and then Ned and the Seven arrive at the Tower of Joy. They take out Sir Arthur Dayne, Lord Commander Hightower, Sir Went, and additionally this is also where Lyanna dies, and the birth of, I guess we'll just call it Baby X for now. And or if you want to call it Jon, you can call it Jon.
So I'm just assuming nobody on this call is arguing there was no baby, right?
No, I think there's definitely a
No.
baby.
Definitely a baby.
That would be hilarious if it's true. and George was like, "No, I completely pointed to that there being no child. You all missed it."
She just died. What?
Any guesses as to the promise? Is it significant? Not significant? For the overall, trying to figure out who the baby is or not.
It's too tough because obviously all the theories are made to fit the text we have.
Mm.
So no matter what we like you can decide whatever the promise is going to be. So it's kind of weird. This is why arguing over theories is tough.
Yeah, agreed. You can, if you start with the promise and then go from there, then it's a little bit like in reverse. You're starting with a conclusion and then trying to find the evidence that supports it, as opposed to looking at the evidence objectively. That's a good point.
Also, if you read something multiple times, you can make it into whatever you want it to be, really. And that's
John
where a
being
lot
the
of
prophet.
yeah, or any of those really crazy theories, like Benjen being Dario or Dario being Euron. If you read everything a lot, you can be like, oh yeah, that could make sense, but it probably isn't. There's a lot of foreshadowing here that makes me think that there's definitely a child, but we truly don't know.
Yeah, but
I
pretty
don't
much.
know. Bed with blood. It's a term that's repeated again and again throughout the book. We just discussed the Miri Mazdur chapter today, and she said, "I know all the secrets of the bloody bed." it's I don't know if somebody else mentions it too. So it's sort of in the book at least, it's a term that's sort of synonymous with having a baby.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say chances are there's definitely a child there. Otherwise, the internet, you completely got it wrong, hardcore.
Like, really wrong.
Yeah, exactly. 100% of the people were wrong. We also have Helen Reed as being one of the 3 survivors, basically, from the Tower of Joy. From getting his ass kicked at the tourney of Harrenhal to being kind of a badass at the Tower of Joy. Was he possibly holding back at the tourney, or did he just, get really good really quick over the course of the war?
I feel like there hasn't been enough time for him to turn into some kind of night killer after getting
Maybe
beat
he,
up by 3 squires.
Maybe he hid while this all happened or something.
No, he couldn't have, because he saves Ned's life.
Well, because he
Oh.
threw a spear from behind a rock.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to, stab someone in the back to, save somebody else. If Arthur Dane is concentrating on Ned and you come up and stab him from behind, there's nothing you can do.
And I don't think the Sword of the Morning was going to go down that easy.
Yeah.
Well, he
Well,
did.
not quite that easy.
Well, maybe that's why they buried him on the spot instead of bringing him back to Starfall. Like, yeah, we don't want to show all these spear wounds he has in his back. That's going to make me look really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that Ned brings back the sword, but not Arthur Dane.
True.
Well, it's a lot more complicated to bring back a body compared to a sword.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well,
He's
there's
all-
some silly, I call it silly, a silly theory where they're all north of the wall. Has anybody heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
They're
No.
not actually dead. They're all north of the wall, some bullshit like that. And Rhaegar's actually Nance.
Yeah. I've when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe, and then I'm like, no, definitely not.
Yeah, I have a hard time buying that one. Why would you give up the cushy good life of basic civilization south of the wall for, oh, you mean I can go live in a tribal life north of the wall where everything is pure hell? No, thank you.
Well, he had to find his other wife. She was north of the wall.
You know,
The third lady in his life.
fair enough. But actually, Howland Reed just kind of vanishes after this. We never hear about Howland and Ned traveling anywhere. Does he just go home, or does he...
He drops
Yeah,
an acorn and smoke comes up and he's gone.
He's like a ninja.
Nobody comes back with Ned. I mean,
Well,
he go
I know,
Starfall
is it
with that?
Casey the Mira?
oh
No.
yeah. He comes back with Ned, but Ned goes back to King's Landing, right?
No,
Or
Ned
does
goes to
Ned go
Starfall.
straight back? No. I mean, he goes to Starfall first, but after that, does he go straight to Winterfell, or does he stop in King's Landing on the way?
I think John would look too suspicious, or whoever he's
That
bringing
was
back
the-
John at
That
that
was
point.
the point I was going to make, that Howland Reed would sort of stay outside the city with John, and then Ned would pay his visits to the king or whatever. But I think what happened was that Ned was furious when Tywin Lannister's men killed Rhaegar's children, and he sort of didn't go back until the Greyjoy Rebellion.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So I'm not sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I've got a number of problems with this because, number one, if it's Jon, why don't you just turn around and go north? You don't need to go to Starfall. You've got the sword, you can return that, but you can do that at your leisure. You can go home, you can bury your sister, you can
But
make sure
Starfall
you can
is,
make sure
on
you
the
can
way.
make sure you can make it's not on the way. Starfall's in the south. Going north is
So
towards
is the Tower.
home.
Tower of
but
Joy's in the
so
south.
is Tower of Joy. Tower of Joy is in Dorne.
Yes, but
bringing
Starfall is
up on
south
that.
of the Tower of Joy.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's going to
probably
be a
not that
quicker
big
trip.
distance.
It's a quicker trip to drop the sword off now than to go all the way back north
Exactly,
and then come all the way back
exactly.
down to
It's
the
probably-
south.
It's
That's true.
Yeah,
It would
but
be
No,
much of a-
Tower of Joy is north of Starfall. It's very out of the way.
right, it's near the Stormlands, isn't it? It's almost by that border.
But compared to Winterfell,
Yeah.
how far out of the way is it?
yeah, exactly.
No, it's south. It's south southwest. Yeah, southwest.
But what I'm saying is if he has to go all the way back to Winterfell and then come all the way back, it's going to take a lot longer than just going to Starfall now and then going back to Winterfell.
Yeah, but he can just send, he can send one of his minions or flunkies that he has to.
He wouldn't do
Go do
that,
it.
not with that sword.
Sent it by courier.
He has too much
only-
respect for Dane.
The only way it kind of makes sense is that he goes from Tower of Joy to Starfall, and then he goes to the King's Road, or the road that's by High Garden in Old Town. If he goes back up that way. Otherwise, it doesn't. It's pretty equidistant between the two, from the map I'm looking at.
Is it a flat map or a globe? Because flat maps are notoriously wrong.
Yeah, I definitely have a Westerosi globe hanging around here.
There was no way he was going to go back up all the way north and then come back, and he was no way he was going to send the sword with anybody else. He's Ned Stark. He's going to deliver the sword. He's got to be. He loves being the dude who has to bear the guilt of shit. So he has to be the guy that rolls in with the sword of the dude that he just killed and take the music. He's going to do it.
Plus, he wants to see that sweet ass. Yeah.
Of course he does. Of course he does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to me,
finally something to talk about with her. Yeah, I killed your bro. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. How awkward was that conversation? Hi, Ashara. Remember me, Ned? We met at the Heron Hall. I didn't dance with you. My brother did.
I leered at you from across the room.
Yeah, I was creeping on you from there. Listen, I've got some good news and some bad news. Good news, I'm here to return your family's ancestral blade. Bad news, I had to pry it out of the dead fingers of your brother, Arthur.
But my brother's dead too. It's okay.
Yeah, we're equal. We're even.
So, all good news for you. All of this is good news.
Yeah.
Wait, where are you going? Don't jump.
Child is dead, and
It looks like there's a great view from that tower. I'll give you a moment to be alone and think it over.
Anybody else just hear that starfall?
Yeah. I mean, it just to me it just seems a little too much. I mean, even Ashara Dane's suicide, it seems kind of far-fetched to me. I mean, I get that, you can be depressed and, even if she had a miscarriage, fine. I get that, depression and all that. But death of her brother is the thing that sort of pushes her over the edge at the hands of Ned. It just seems a little too far gone for me.
Word. Agreed.
Well, if she
it's not. It's probably a combination of a lot of things, right? So her kid is dead, right? And then her brother dies. And then the father of her child dies. And she's sort of been... I know Dorne is quite lenient and stuff, but still she was at court, so I'm assuming her reputation has taken a hit if anyone finds out that she was pregnant, right? So it could have been a combination of all of those things. I think that's enough to drive a person to suicide if you're sort of depressed.
We don't even know really what she was like anyway. We don't know that much about her.
Exactly. We don't know anything about her. We don't know.
She could have been a nut job. She's just really pretty nut job.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, to me, and actually the point of taking a hit at the reputation is a very good one. But I don't know. To me, the deaths of people in war, and I get that, it's a tragic thing. It's sad. It's nothing anyone would ever, hope for. I'm sure she wasn't sitting at Starfall going, "Man, I hope Arthur never comes back. This is a really nice castle." No, I mean, the Danes are a noble family. They're a military family, or the ancient equivalent of a military family. And people who grow up in military families, they know that, during a time of war, when they see a loved one go out, that, the reality is that person might not come back. I mean, it's something that they live with. It's an eventuality you kind of expect. You certainly don't hope for it. So finding out that the equivalent of the Navy SEAL of the family got killed doesn't really mesh too well with me. I mean, it's certainly depressing, certainly, sorrowful news, but I don't think it's enough to push somebody over the edge.
Are there any other suicides like that we know of within the books? Because I'm not remembering any, so maybe it just seems weird to us that the one suicide is Ashara Dane. But I don't. I mean, like whether
Viserys
it's weird
committed suicide.
But I mean, like, it just might seem weird to us as readers, being like, "Oh, there's this one suicide that doesn't seem right since nobody else did that." But it might very well be. I kind of think of Ashara as like a red herring almost, but I don't know.
I don't know, but at the same time, she flings herself off a tower into the ocean, and the body's never recovered. I mean, I'm sure not too many people went looking for it. Well, somebody must have gone looking for it, but the possibility of it getting washed out to sea is a possibility as well. But yeah, exactly. Like it just seems too convenient. When you have all of this plotting and questionable, parentages going on, a suicide just seems too convenient to write somebody out to avoid suspicion.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
Okay.
Suicide's a total hoax. We'll come back to that.
Okay. And yeah, let's move on. 284, Rhaella dies on Dragonstone, giving birth. Willem, Darien, the surviving royals flee from Dragonstone to Braavos to reside in the House of the Red Door with the Lemon Tree. And at an unknown point in time, the secret marriage pact for Viserys and one of the Dornish princesses is signed by Sir Willem on behalf of House Targaryen, with Oberyn Martell and the Sea Lord as a witness. And Daenerys isn't mentioned in this deal at all. And is that significant at all, or is it just an oversight, or is that something that...
I would say that it's not really that significant because they weren't really thinking about her in that situation. Like, they're marrying off their female to their male. That way she can become a queen or whatever. If you marry off their female to your male, it doesn't really matter. She's the Lady of Sunspear or whatever it is.
Right.
Lady of Dorne. It's not really the same thing.
I guess, and I suppose they're sort of getting back to what they just lost and having the, the next queen of Westeros, so to speak, when they overthrow Robert and company.
Right.
Okay, well, that's pretty much it for the historical wrap-up, so let's get on to the theoretical. And who wants to go first?
I'll do Jay first. Everybody knows it anyway.
Okay.
All right, so just some, obviously, R plus L equals J means that he has to have some characteristics of both Rhaegar and Lyanna. So, as far as Lyanna goes, he looks like a Stark. What are you going to do? They say Jon looks like Arya. Arya looks like Lyanna. Ergo, Jon looks like Lyanna. Sound good? We also get Jon was slender, graceful, and quick instead of muscular, strong, and fast, which I would put more toward a Rhaegar thing than a Stark thing. They seem like hardy people, not like light, quick people. Then again, he could have got that from Lyanna, so we don't really know there. Rhaegar's good at everything he does, and Jon kind of seems the same way, not quite to the extent that Rhaegar is, but he seems to succeed at everything, and even Catelyn gets disappointed because he's better at Robb at a lot of things. They're both melancholy. I have that Rhaegar's eyes were a very dark purple, so perhaps Jon's eyes could just be a really, really dark purple. We don't really know. Ned, obviously, if this was the case, he would have to keep it secret. So when Robert shows up in the north, it's interesting that Jon is not around. I mean, I know they put it because the queen wouldn't take a bastard being around, but Jon is always with the siblings every other time. But when Robert and his family are around, Jon is nowhere to be found. Now, could that be because he shares some characteristics that are like Rhaegar that nobody in the north would know about, but perhaps Ned and Robert at that point? So, he says he can't bring him to King's Landing. Now, do you think Cersei would really put up that big of a stink if just one of the Hand's extra guard people or people that are with him was a bastard? Or do you think it's to keep Robert's eye off Jon because he is the son of Rhaegar, who Robert would want to kill right away? Another thing is, I read this on Westeros.org. The Song of Swords, that term Song of Swords, is only referred to when talking about Rhaegar or Jon. Nobody else has that said about them. And then the whole blue rose thing so in Dany's vision, the blue rose growing out of a crack in the wall, referring to Jon. Mm-hmm. Now, blue roses are associated with Lyanna and Rhaegar the whole time they talk about them together. The blue roses were left, Lyanna's favorite thing was blue roses. So also with Bael the Bard and the Winter Rose, he sneaks into Winterfell, kidnaps a Stark daughter, and then she was returned with a son, and he leaves a blue rose behind when he steals her. So in the same thing, she is taken, she has hypothetically a son, and he was returned to Winterfell. And then all the obvious stuff. And when Eddard, he never thinks of Jon as his son, but that doesn't mean that he has to be their kid. Sure, I think that's all I have for right now.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I'll think of something else as we go.
You make some good points for sure.
Well,
So I know that one of the biggest things that people who love the R plus L equals J thing lean on is that vision in the House of the Undead with the rose and the wall of ice thing. The thing is, for me though, is that obviously representing Jon, but also it alludes to Lyanna too because of her whole Winter Roses thing, her motif there. I mean, I just think that whole thing is too cryptic. Like, I think that I don't know if that's like 100% John at the wall being like Lyanna being his mom and stuff. I don't know. I just think people want to jump to that conclusion a little bit too quick. I think it could mean a lot of things.
Well, I think it's also, like, in that same House of the Undying scene, she sees what we all assume is Rob because of the wolf with the head, or the person with the head of a wolf. And obviously he's not the son of them, so it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're brother and sister just because she saw him in the House of the Undying. So I can see why that would be another excuse why not to take it.
Right.
I don't know. One problem I have with the visual aspect, and yeah, John looks like Arya, who resembles Lyanna. I mean, Tyrion looks at John on the way north to the wall, and he even comments like, whoever his mother was, she left little to nothing, of herself in there.
Yeah.
So even if Tyrion, who's one of the most observant people we have as a point of view character, he's not pulling anything out. He's not pulling any Targaryen aspects out. Then,
and we assume he's seen Rhaegar before. He would have been really young, but wouldn't he have seen Rhaegar before?
Yeah, maybe, or at the very least, he's probably seen pictures or something like that.
Have, because Tyrion was hidden away in Casterly Rock.
Oh, that's true.
Right, so Tywin wouldn't have
So
let
he
him
hasn't
out.
seen.
I'll also say this: if we're going off the whole like looks like kind of things, I have a quote from Eddard 9, the one about, so he's like riding through the night on his horse and says, Ned saw Jon's face in front of his own, so like a younger version of his own. If the gods frown so on bastards, he thought dully, why did they fill men with such lusts? So like, in this thing...
I had something on that too.
Yeah, Ned sees it being like, he thinks, I mean, it's just like Jon being, again, related to Starks. And in my mind, instead of pointing to Lyanna, that more points to like Brandon being something that he looks like.
In that same thing you were talking about, after he sees Bara, is what you're talking about when he's on his way back to Bravo?
Yeah.
Okay, in that, his thoughts, he promises her he will tell Robert, the Bara girl. Then on the way back, he thinks of promises to Lyanna. Then he thinks of Jon. Then he thinks of Rhaegar.
Interesting.
Yeah, good point.
I have with my theory of them being twins, I have like a theory on genetics in Westeros, which is a little nerdy, but...
Because God knows nerds don't like A Song of Ice and Fire.
But, I mean, when you look at the whole issue with Cersei and Cersei's children with Joffrey and Tommen and them all looking like Lannisters, in that Baratheons only have children that look like Baratheons, it seems like either one or the other wins out a lot in Westeros, rather than with our genetics, it's usually a mix. But
Except for with the Starks.
Yeah, well, the Starks, most of them look Tully except for
Arya.
Yeah.
Which looks predominantly Stark. Could just be that in Westeros, that's just the way things works. Jon ended up looking more like Lyanna.
That could be, because you have dominant and recessive traits, so he could have taken after if the Starks had dominant traits over one side or the other. Could be.
And another thing that I didn't really consider canon, because it has to do with the graphic novels. Apparently, in one of the graphic novels, they explained Jon as having an aquiline nose, and I guess Rhaegar was talked about the same way. I don't know what an aquiline nose is. I just saw that on Westeros, so they don't really consider it necessarily canon because it was a graphic novel, but...
I think that's very specific.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think we can count stuff out of graphic novels. That's like saying, "Oh, look, Spider-Man is 5'4", so is half the other characters who are 5'4". They must be Spider-Man. No,
I think it was written out.
Artistic
I don't think it was drawn. No, it wasn't drawn. It was written out.
Oh, it was written out like somebody.
Yeah, it was
one
written
person
out.
who'd seen both was taking a comment on it.
Yeah, it was aquiline nose. Apparently, it was. I don't know what that means, so I I don't really know, but it was in the text. It wasn't in the drawing. It wasn't like, hey, look, they look the same. It wasn't nothing like that.
Did George write that, or?
I have no idea. I know he approved them, but that doesn't mean he wrote them. But then again, he approved the show. He definitely didn't write that shit.
That's true. I would say that's not. It could be, but it probably isn't related.
I would say it's not canon, but if it comes out that both of them had an aquiline nose in the novels, they'll be like, oh, well, I guess they were ahead of the game over there. Oh,
Yes.
look at this.
So an aquiline nose is basically just a hook nose with a prominent bridge. So it gives it the
that
appearance of
doesn't
being
seem that
curved or slightly
attractive.
bent.
Well, then I have an aquiline nose. I'm as attractive as Rhaegar and Jon. Huh. I don't even know if I really do or not. I just
People have like similar noses, whether they're related or not.
right.
A lot of so.
It's like there's only like 10 different kind of noses you can possibly have.
This is
But
so
in
specific.
Westeros, if somebody has like same noses, they're related. Like everyone tall is related to Dunk.
What?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, the problem with the appearance and judging everything on appearance is, you can even have something like cousins who look very similar that just happen to favor, the same side of the family that they, share in common. One of my older sisters and one of my cousins look very similar, but, they're not full-blood related. They're, just hailing from the wood side of my family. That doesn't necessarily, prove same lineage beyond, they have a common ancestor, and I think it's kind of the same thing.
That's
I
why
also-
I keep
yeah.
more than just physical appearance.
I will say this also is that like if we're gonna go by that, I think you have to be fair across the board because like if that's the case, then you have to think that Aegon is real and not Fagon. If you're just going to go by appearance, I mean he's got it from the outside, at least all the requirements, but everybody writes him off because of other things, right?
Well,
So-
yeah, but so would that prostitute that looks like Daenerys. That's I was like, she's just as viable a candidate if we're going for just looks alone. So
No, I
Yeah.
totally agree. That's why it wasn't just looks that I was going by. I had some other stuff, right? I had some other stuff in there, didn't I, guys?
Yeah.
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 But it's hard when you don't really, we don't know a ton about Rhaegar. Like, we know his general disposition and some characteristics of what he looked like, but we don't really know that much about him because I think George keeps it a secret on purpose because he wants to let us know in his own time.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think this is the be-all, end-all theory. It's just the one that I had to write a thing in for. And I guess it's the one I believe the most so far. But I want to hear you guys', so we all
Right.
set with R plus L equals J?
I'm also with RLJ. Anybody else have anything to add?
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's the one true theory.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, does it make any sense if it's not Jon Targaryen?
yes.
No.
All right, let's go.
Like maybe John just is some bastard, and it doesn't.
He
No,
could
he's
very well be.
still- no, he's still Jon Stark.
I
As I
do
will
think it makes a
explain.
lot of literary sense for him to be the son of someone important, but then again, George Martin has like constantly flipped those to make, this guy's important. No, he's not really that important. Like, we all would have thought Robb Stark was some big deal, or Ned Stark was some big deal until they died, so.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right.
Did we mention the scene where Bran dreams about Ned in the crypts and said that he was worried something about Jon? I forget where that's from, but I know that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
thing.
Did you say that, White Raven? I forget.
I did not. I didn't mention that.
Okay, I think that's a good foreshadow.
Yeah, and John also has that reoccurring dream where Winterfell's empty and he's going down into the crypts and he's yelling, "I'm not a Stark. I'm not a Stark" as well.
Oh yeah, there was also a
Yeah,
thing I
he's
saw
not
that I was just like,
kids.
it's like a prophecy from John. When they were kids, he like pretended to be the Dragon Knight,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
like somewhere I read that like his name could have been Aemon the Dragon Knight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like his name could have been Aemon, and like he's always saying like I'm the Dragon Knight, and he could actually end up being the Dragon Knight.
Could be some foreshadowing, yeah. It's kind of like Tyrion pretending to, set fire to things and flying on a dragon when you made like a little, campfire. I think it's just more chalking it up to kids that pretend. I mean, if you look at kids who are playing sports outside, they're shooting hoops and they're pretending to be like LeBron James or Michael Jordan or, any other, famous, sports star. I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
But those kids aren't prophets like Jon Snow.
Well, you know what, to be fair, if I pass a kid and he ends up growing up to be the next LeBron James, I'm going to email you and be like, ha, in your face, this kid turned out to be that good.
Perhaps that kid was a prophet.
Well, there you go.
He's definitely making a profit if he's the next LeBron James.
That's true. He'll be pulling in some mad Nike cash from that thing.
All right, let's roll out the
All right.
next theory.
All right, I'm gonna step up to the plate. I'm gonna make this happen. I as well. I think Scott is a sympathizer for me.
I have no sympathy for anyone, so
Okay.
I'm an equal opportunity mocker. But yeah,
Okay.
I think you might be right
But-
on this, though.
In any case, I'm about to, even in a poor sense, I'm probably not going to remember everything, but I have some stuff written down. I think the best way I can present the R plus L equals D theory, that Rhaegar and Lyanna birthed Daenerys Targaryen. Yeah, it happened, and this is why. So, I'm going to go back to the tourney at Harrenhal. I think this is where it all began. I think this is where it all started, and you have to look at it this way. So, I am of the opinion that Rhaegar had a lot of foreshadowing and forethought for this. I mean, it's not just like, okay, so Went is on the Kingsguard and he just like talks to his brother and they're like, all right, we'll just have the biggest tournament of all time. Sounds good. Cool. All right. So then Rhaegar just happens to win the tournament himself. Like, how does he beat all those amazing other knights in Westeros? Like, he just beats them. How does he do that? Like, Barristan talks about that in the Kingbreaker. He just like couldn't understand how everybody lost to Rhaegar. Like, nobody could touch him. Anyways, that points to it being like kind of rigged somehow.
Was he using his ruby shield?
Yeah, again, that could be part of it. I think that's kind of the sense that he's wearing rubies this whole time. Rhaegar's got rubies going on the entire time. So like, and he just happens to have the winter roses for Lyanna there at the tournament. In my opinion, I think it was, I don't know why, I don't have an answer necessarily for why her specifically was who he picked. Like, could have just been really good looking. Could have been the Laughing Tree thing. He found out that she was the Knight of the Laughing Tree and like thought that was awesome, so he wanted to impregnate her with the third head. But
It's actually the second head, but yeah.
I don't know exactly why he picked her, but like I think that there was some forethought before the tournament started because he shows up with the bouquet of blue winter roses. I think that's just, and it's her favorite. Like, how do you know that? I mean, I think that the once wild and, Stark like Lyanna being all wild and free on horses and stuff got totally tamed by the softie that is Rhaegar. And
he played the music and made her cry.
Exactly. I think he totally played it up. I think he won her over a little bit. And so I think I'm of the opinion that she like willingly went off with him kind of. But that's again, neither here nor there. So
you kind of make him into a creep show. He like shows up and he knows everything about her and then he follows her home and
yeah, dude, I'm telling you. Rhaegar was, in my opinion, Rhaegar was like super, you heard the description earlier, he's like super book nerdy. He's like bought into this prophecy full bore at this point. Like he thinks that he's gotta be the dude that saves the world. So like, he's also nerdy enough to have read enough in the books and stuff. He knows like how to play the harp like a badass. Like he has so many talents and stuff and he knows that he's gotta put it on display. So I think he goes out and he does his thing in the most badass way possible. So I'm gonna go. That's kind of the beginning of it all. I think is at the tournament, obviously.
Honestly, Rhaegar's like prime male of Westeros. He's got like everything.
Everything. He's the biggest badass of them all, in my opinion.
Well, he's good at everything. He's really smart, and he's a prince.
Yeah. So then, I think besides the tournament, the next biggest thing you have to look at as far as like a weird like warning sign, red flags all over the place, is this whole like Dany's storyline. Like in her entire storyline in the books, she's constantly having to think about and being reminded of like, who are you really? Like Quaithe keeps saying to her, remember who you are. The dragons know. She keeps having this vision of the lemon tree in Bravos with the House of the Red Door. Like, she doesn't know exactly what that means. Nobody tells her anything. Viserys is a piece of shit. Like, it's a whole, like, there's like that whole arc over her entire storyline, and she still doesn't know. She's still like wrestling with her like who she is kind of thing. Like, if it was to be true, like if it came out that she was Rhaegar and Lyanna's daughter instead of like a sibling to Rhaegar, think about how much I think that would be a big blow to her confidence, and like, but at the same time, a big realization, kind of impotence to like make her go. I don't know if that's the right word, but a big like motivation to make her finish things out. Because before, I think she was doing stuff just because she felt like it was the family name or that she was entitled or something that she had to kind of carry it on. Think about if she then had to realize that, oh wait, no, I'm just a half Stark bastard. I'm actually not anything that I thought I was. Like, that just would turn everything on its head for her. But that's, again, not this is just my thoughts. These aren't actual evidence. I'll get into the evidence one sec.
I suppose she doesn't necessarily have to be a bastard if they were actually married.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's like, they may or may not be married.
Right, correct.
Right.
Well, also, aside from the old gods, like, witnessing it and, you know, in the future, Bran, like, who the hell else is going to know?
Right.
You know? Like,
Blood Raven.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So then I kind of go to then from this you kind of go to Ned. So you focus in kind of on Ned's character and all of Game of Thrones. And, you know, I think it's not, in my mind, I think it's not a coincidence that he has the fever dream about the Tower of Joy right after telling Robert that he won't consent to going after Dany to kill her. I think that's, you know, that's literally right after that happens. So I think that's crazy. And then also, you know, we talked about the promises a little bit, that he feels like he has broken promises a lot. In my mind, like, if his, like, mission from Lyanna was to protect Jon, he did that. Like, that happened. He succeeded. Nobody, to his knowledge at that point, would know in any kind of inclination that he's a secret Targaryen. Like,
Unless his promise wasn't to protect him, it was to, you know, make his claim or something like that. You know, you don't really know.
I mean, yeah, unless Lyanna's made him promise to someday put Jon on the throne or something like that, then I guess that's different. But
She was like, tell him who his mother and father were. And he's like,
Don't
Yeah,
let him grow
and
up a
then I
bastard.
I think what Barristan says about the tournament himself kind of really points to Ashara and Brandon banging it out. And combined with the mysterious and not at all suicide of Ashara later on, I think that totally, so, and then you also combine that with, like, what I was looking for earlier before the podcast started of, like, when Arya runs into Edric Dane and how much good shit Edric Dane has to say about the Starks for some reason, even though he should in all rights, like, hate the Starks because they killed his uncle. And, like, Ned wasn't particularly nice to their family by all accounts, but at the same time, the kid is freaking named after Ned and, like, really likes him and says good shit about him and says that, you know, he was milk brothers with somebody. In my opinion, that somebody was instead Jon, who he was milk brothers with there in Starfall.
So you think Jon was the
Yes.
bastard of Brandon and Ashara?
Yes, that is kind of my opinion, is
No,
that...
but John was his milk brother because when Ned stopped at Starfall, the woman who nursed John was the same one that afterwards nursed Edric. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter who's.
That
Where
would
did
be
they
that would be Wyla the Wet Nurse, and that's also
Yeah.
the name that Ned gives to Robert when they're heading
Yeah.
south to King's Landing as the father of.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
I
I'm
don't
sorry,
think-
as the mother of
I don't
Jon
think-
Snow.
Yeah,
I think that's
who
just 'cause he has to
his
have a
vet
reason.
nurse was nothing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it doesn't matter who the vet nurse was. It doesn't affect who the parents would have been.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They're milk brothers because they had the same vet nurse.
Yeah, and I think he told Robert that just because he had to have somebody. Like, he couldn't just be like, no, just I found it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was easy for him to go to the name of the wet nurse that he knew. And if you also are of the opinion that Wyla was also at the Tower of Joy because, quote, they found him there, then he definitely would, like, at least know a woman to say as a scapegoat if he was pressured like that. The other thing is this. So, like, if you go back to, like, Ned and what Ned does, so at one point in that same chapter when he runs into Barrow or whatever, he says... I don't remember where exactly this is in the chapter, but he says, quote, this is his thoughts, I guess. He hadn't thought about Rhaegar Targaryen for years. If you're, like, secretly raising Rhaegar's bastard, like, you would have thought about Rhaegar before. That'd be weird for you to just, like, never think about the dude, especially if you fought an entire war against him.
I don't think it would be that weird. Like, if you have, like, an uncle that dies, you go a long time without thinking about him.
Would be John. I think in Ned's head, he would be thinking of John as Lyanna's son, not Rhaegar's.
Right.
Okay.
He didn't know Rhaegar.
All right. Okay, that's fine. So that's just, just throwing it out there. Then another thing, like early on, like in the entire book, like earliest on in Kat's second chapter or something, when she's like thinking about when that one time was when she confronted Ned about who Jon's parents were or who Jon's mother was. Well, there have been rumors about Ashara Dane and stuff all in Winterfell. He basically just flat out tells Kat when she asks about Jon, she's like never. So she's like asking about Ashara because she's like, Kat's just like, who is this Ashara person? Why is everybody talking about her? And then Ned replies like, never ask me about Jon. So he basically just like implies that they're connected, and it's just like weird. If you look at that part of the chapter, it's kind of weird. Like he doesn't have to say, never ask me about Jon when she asks him about Ashara instead. And then the biggest thing is this, like, again, this is just back to Dany stuff, the whole lemon trees. I can't, like, it keeps getting brought up. Like, Martin keeps writing about this lemon trees and Bravos thing. Like, even in the Mercy chapter, Raph is in Bravos with this random guard, and he's like, dude, I thought it's supposed to be, like, nice weather here. Where are the orange trees and stuff? And he's like, dude, where do you think we are? We're not in fucking Dorne. There's no, like, lemon trees here. Like, even in the Mercy chapter that gets brought up. I think it's going to be really important. And if they're trying to tell me that Daenerys was brought up in Bravos the entire time, that's just absolute bullshit. Like, I'm not buying it. Like, it has to be that she was at least for a little while in Dorne, like, at least for her, like, early childhood in Dorne for a while. So unless somebody can explain to me kind of how she could have been born on Dragonstone, like everybody thinks, then, like, raised in Dorne for a little while, then, like, goes back to Dragonstone again, and then from there leaves with Viserys and them to Bravos later. I don't know how that's supposed to work, because I just really can't buy that she was somehow raised with lemon trees and Bravos when there just aren't any there. There are just none. So
but somebody could have, like, brought over some soil and grown, like, one lemon tree. That's all she remembers. She was one lemon tree.
Yeah,
Right.
Actually, I'm going to side with Nadia on
And
this
you
one.
can, like, manage to grow, like, one plant out of its, like, natural
I mean,
environment.
if that's the case, I just don't know why it keeps getting brought up by George then.
Or
Like,
she was just like,
Where has it been
Viserys,
brought up?
what kind
I
of
don't
tree is that?
really-
It's
he's
brought
like,
up in Storm of
lemon?
Swords.
yeah, Anguy or somebody says it in Storm of Swords, being like,
Yeah, I have the quote if you want me to say it.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Hang this, she said, handing him the duck. Anguy shuffled his feet. We were thinking we might eat this, Shima, this with lemons, if you have some. Lemons? And where would you get lemons? Does this look like Dorne to you, you feckled fool? So, yeah.
But Anger is in the Riverlands, right? What does
Yeah,
this
but
have
if you
to
look
do
at
with
the map, Riverlands is about, like, the same latitude that the Riverlands are, or I think a bit north, I'm not sure. But it doesn't line up correctly.
Yeah, and then the biggest thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you can sort of, like, get, like, one plant. It doesn't have to be like a whole orchard of lemon trees.
But it still
It-
has to
it was
grow
just
there.
how
The climate
one-
still has to be conducive for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not about the soil.
Well, I mean, there could be an argument made about, like, maybe a greenhouse or something like that, but Dany's visions are... Yeah, but also on the same thing that she always thinks of herself, like, running through a field. There aren't really any fields in Bravos.
There definitely are not. I'm just saying it. This is, I guess, what I think happens instead, is that, obviously,
See, but
Dany
Dany did not just grow up in Westeros. They've been moving place. They've been
But what
moving
they're
all
saying
over
is
the
when
few cities.
she remembers the good times, the time when she had a home, the house with the red door, these were the things that she remembers from that
Right.
time.
And she
Well,
recalls
that's
looking
why-
out the window that she had in her room with the House of the Red Door and seeing the lemon tree.
Yeah, and that implies that they were at least at that location for at least some amount of time. Like, it wasn't just a stop. Like, they were there for...
Yeah, I think until, like, Willem Dafoe died, they were in one place.
Yeah. So, like, I just can't see that place being Bravos in any sense. It can't be that. Then, when Ned is about to die in the Black Cells, he asks to write a letter. That could either, I mean, this doesn't have to apply to Dany. It could be to Jon or to Dany, I guess, if you think so. But he asks Varys to write a letter and asks if he'd deliver it. And Varys says, well, yeah, I'm going to read it first, if I'll deliver it if I want to, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But you could say that he was going to write a letter to Dany at that point, and I might.
There is no chance that he would write anything like that in a letter that some nondescript person is going to be carrying. He can't keep the secret that long, and then...
Yeah, I mean, he could have just as likely been intending to write a letter to Robb, like, you know what, just hold on to the North. Don't bother coming south. Forget about Sansa. It's her fault I'm here. Just hold on to the North and be the king of the North. No, it's possible, it's plausible, but there's no indication of who the letter was to, or would have been to.
Indication, and that's true. He has a lot of people he could be writing letters to. He's done himself a big puddle of shit, so he has a lot of explaining to do to a lot of people. So,
so I have a question. I have a
Go
question about this. When Robert orders Dany's death, Ned is right there, right? Ned has a huge argument with Robert where he says, we shouldn't be killing children. At no point does he thinks in his own private thoughts is he thinking that does he feel any sort of guilt about it or about Dany, or he doesn't have any thoughts that might hint towards Dany being his niece.
Well, why should he feel guilty if nothing's been done yet? Like, he was actively trying to prevent them from killing her, and I think the implication
even in his head.
The implication...
But even in his head, there's no, justification. He just wants to protect her because she's a child, not because she's Lyanna's child.
Yeah, but there's also the implication, though, that it could be kinslaying. And that's something that the Northerners consider to be a sin. Like, it's strong enough for him to resign over it. And Ned doesn't actually do a very good job protecting children, if you really look at it. I mean, look what happened to... He doesn't. He doesn't protect his own kids. He doesn't protect Bara. He doesn't protect Gendry or anybody else. So really, it may be a convenient cover that he, is saying, look, we don't kill children. That's not something we do. So he doesn't sort of tip his hand that, oh, by the way, I may have committed high treason by smuggling out, my niece to wherever.
No, but I'm talking about his own private thoughts, not what he says to Robert.
So
gotcha. Well, that might just be too easy of a giveaway if if we got the full story right in his own private thoughts. That would erode the mystery.
So two things.
No, but see, what I'm saying is when he thinks about Jon, he feels a certain sense of guilt, right? But when he thinks about Dany, he doesn't. He feels like nothing. There's nothing
I don't think
there.
so.
No, there's two parts where Ned thinks of Dany when he's also thinking of Lyanna.
Please say them. Go.
So I don't know what Ned chapter it is. It's page 112 in the paperback. So it's in the beginning, but Robert brings up a letter that Jorah is in Pentos and that he's looking to get back to Westeros by sabotaging Dany and Viserys. And he brings up Dany, and then he thinks of the war with Rhaegar, and then he thinks of his promises with Lyanna. So there's the one loose line with that. And then I don't have the page number of the chapter, but I know that when they're discussing of whether or not to kill Dany at the table, that Ned also thinks of Lyanna's broken promises as well.
Yeah, I know that there are multiple times, just like when you're talking about, but I need to find the quotes themselves, and that's a bitch to do sometimes.
I mean, the quote on page 112 that I have here is very long. It's it's a big paragraph that he describes, because he's also describing for the reader the war and giving us information about that. So it's quite a bit. But do you want me to do a Cliff Notes version, or?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. Robert asks him if he remembers Jorah, and then Ned says, I might forget him. Would that I might forget
trading
him.
Bastard.
Then he describes Jorah for a paragraph, and then Robert says, sure, Jorah is now in Pentos, anxious to earn a royal pardon that would allow him to return from exile. Lord Varys makes good use of him. Then they talk about how he's becoming a spy. And then Ned says, Daenerys Targaryen has wed some Dothraki horse lord. What of it? Shall we send her a wedding gift? The king frowned. A knife, perhaps, a good sharp one, but a bold man to wield it. Ned did not feign surprise. Robert's hatred of the Targaryens was a madness in him. He remembered the angry words that had exchanged when Tywin had presented Robert with the corpses of Rhaegar's wife and children as a token of fealty. Ned named that murder. Robert called it war. When he had protested that the young prince and princess were no more than babes, just the new made king had replied, I see no babes, only dragon spawn. Let me skip down a little bit, because there's a lot. Eddard Stark had ridden out that very day in a cold rage to fight the last battles of the war alone in the south. It had taken another death to reconcile them, Lyanna's death and the grief that they had shared over her passing. So that's the line. It's long, but it's there.
You can see where the progression is there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a jump from, oh, Daenerys, yeah, that's because of this.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
more like
There's
a progression
nothing
through the war.
There's nothing to relate Daenerys to Lyanna in this.
There's also nothing there linking Jon
Somebody
to
pointed
this as
out
well.
that, why is he
Correct.
so worried about Daenerys being killed, okay? So he fought with Robert, he fought with his best friend because Rhaegar's children were murdered, who had nothing to do with Lyanna, right? And he fought with the king for that. So is it that much of a stretch for us to imagine that he would also be fighting for Dany, even though she's not related to him?
The only thing you're right, but I think that what also is interesting here is that they don't mention Viserys at all. Like, you would think that that he would also be just as prominent as Daenerys.
Well, I think it's because she married a horse, like the Dothraki Call of Calls, basically, that they're more worried about her than him.
That's
and
true.
maybe they got, like, the FYI on Viserys is crazy and nobody will ever follow that dude.
Yeah, I know that there are parts in his POVs that the Promise Me Ned comes up while he's thinking about or Dany's being talked about, and I can't remember where they are.
Okay.
But again, I could probably, I get what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but you can explain it away by saying they're talking about killing one of Rhaegar's relatives, like a Targaryen, and he's thinking, well, Jon's a Targaryen, or if this is the case, he's thinking Jon's a Targaryen, he would want to kill him too if he knew about him. So that could be like the part of the promise.
Exactly. And see, the thing is, it all comes down, for me at least, it always goes back to one thing, the symbolism, right? The blue roses are sort of Lyanna's thing, right? That they're always used to symbolize Lyanna.
No.
Right? And then there's that vision of Bran, I think, where he sees a blue rose growing out of a chink in the wall.
That's Dany.
That's Dany in the House of the Undying.
What?
That's Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying with the blue rose.
Oh, yeah.
And here,
who's at the wall? Who's at the wall who could be possibly related to Lyanna? It's Jon.
It says a wall, but yeah.
But he,
it's not a wall. It's a wall of
to his
ice.
credit, it
wall.
could be Brandon's son, and if he's Brandon's son, he's related to Lyanna. Not quite as tight knit as that, but
It like the blue rose growing out of the wall. That's Jon.
Okay.
And he's Lyanna's son.
Okay, that's one interpretation.
Right.
That's the popular interpretation, but by far.
Exactly.
75%, son.
I'll say this. If I'm going to be devil's advocate for my own theory that I just presented, except it's not mine, but yeah. If I'm going to do devil's advocate, the biggest problem that I would find with R plus L equals D is the whole baby swap and Daenerys being born on Dragonstone. That's the toughest thing in my mind to get around.
Okay.
It takes too much for Ned to have known that the baby died or whatever, because she was pregnant, and she clearly would have had a child.
Exactly. Rhaella had a baby, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people think that it was Daenerys, right? Everyone acknowledges that it was Daenerys.
Well, the supporters of R plus L equal J certainly are of the opinion that it is Daenerys.
Well, in Westeros, I think it's common knowledge in Westeros that it's Daenerys, but that doesn't.
That's true, yeah.
Jon is okay. So let's for a second let's accept that Daenerys is Rhaegar and Lyanna's child, right? And Jon is Brandon and Ashara's. Okay, so how would this baby get from the Tower of Joy to Dragonstone?
I'll address that when I do my theory, because it's a little similar to what Peter just threw out there, but it's a variant. So I'll address that later on when my theory. But going back to what Peter just put out there, and all the way back to the tourney, here's the thing about Rhaegar. You're asking like how he could have won. Dude, the guy grew up as a royal. He literally has probably the best teachers that money can buy. And the ones that money can't buy are probably serving in the Kingsguard. There's no way he didn't learn from the best, including Barristan.
And he says he's good at everything.
Right, and Barristan even thinks, he's quite good at everything. And also, I get the, the Blue Rose thing just happens to be there. But, like, if Rhaegar had lost the tourney, like, had somebody else, like, won... Like, what, did they have, like, a separate, like, laurel of, like, rare roses, like, hanging around, like, oh, no, Rhaegar lost, put that one down. Get the one of, like, lilacs. Yeah, that one. Send that one out. Okay, I mean, to me, it just seems like it would be, it would be something that would be, like, a prize, like a trophy, how it's sometimes displayed during, like, a big game. The winner gets this. To me, that would be something that, it's sort of like the trophy or the championship belt or whatever you want to call it, like they have in boxing. That would be kind of displayed and available for everybody to see. To me, that's how that would work. And another problem I have with the whole Ned in the Tower of Joy dream and the timing of it is it starts off with he dreamed an old dream. To me, that just kind of seems more of a symptom of having something like, medieval version of PTSD than anything else. Yes, the timing may be reminding it and causing him to have it again, but that it's an old dream, it might be like a reoccurring dream that, for the narrative purposes, just gets mentioned again. And that's that. I think you're getting to the right conclusion just through a different way.
And definitely a not as thorough way, I'll tell you that. I could be much more thorough about it, but time is not on my side. I'll throw other things in there when I think of them, but we can move to the next theory if anybody wants to go on.
Ooh, can I go?
Sure.
Okay, so this is basically the combination of the two previous series, R plus L equals Dany and Jon, and they're twins!
What?
R plus L equals DJ.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
DJ Tanner from, like, Full House.
DJ Hodor.
So basically, for the same reasons that you kind of bring up with R plus L equals D, the kind of what's wrong with Dany's like perception of her childhood. She thinks she's in Bravos when things are not looking right with the lemon trees. So that's kind of part of the reason why I think this. So this also keeps the fact that Jon is heavily foreshadowed to be Rhaegar and Lyanna's. So keeping all those same things from R plus L equals J, but also bringing him over to maybe there was two. This is also symbolizing the Song of Ice and Fire, literally. So Dany is the Song of Fire and Jon is the Song of Ice, and they make one song. And then
that's one incestuous song. Twins get it on.
So I have this really this very nerdy other parallel that why I think that they're twins, and it's to Star Wars. So Dany is Leia, Jon is Luke. And the things that I have on this is that Dany and Leia both lose their home. They don't know about their twin brother nor their real parents. They were raised by adopted-ish parents for Dany. They both heavily influence politics and leaders, and they're both humanitarians. And then Jon/Luke both grow up unaware of their true parents. They're both raised by their aunt and uncle, and they're trained against the enemy by Yoda/Kenobi and Aemon/Mormont. So that's the kind of so that's kind of the similarity I drew there. I'm also not the biggest knowledgeable person of Star Wars. I kind of just found this. So if there's more, feel free to comment when this comes out. And obviously,
Luke and Jon are both moody and like, can I go to the wall now? No, wait till next season. He's like, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank left.
And obviously, like, this would make sense if they're like parallel, that they would be twins. And then I have the thing that I brought up earlier about like the problem with Dany and Jon being twins is their appearance. The thing with Westerosi genetics is different. So if the genetics or if the seed is strong with both Rhaegar and Lyanna, then they would have one child that is Stark and one that is Targaryen.
Fire and ice don't mix.
Exactly.
The DNA in the womb is literally tearing itself apart and fighting over the egg.
It's what killed the mother.
And then, so the other thing that I noticed that could be a problem is that the prince that was promised prophecy is singular. If they're twins, it could just mean that the birth of them is the singular thing. So they would be the prince and princess twins that were promised.
I do think George Martin has said that Jon is like 9 months older than Dany, though.
Yeah, so, yeah, he said that the specific quote, I think, is that they might be about 9 months apart, but it's definitely less than a year. So he hasn't, like, blatantly confirmed it. I think that what he could be saying is that as far as Westeros knows, that they're about 9 months apart.
Right. Just like Westeros knows she's Dany, but they don't really know.
Yeah. I think that if you were to say that they were, like, why the age difference is there, either Ned or the Danes or Viserys changed the age to make sense with whatever their purpose, whether it's to not be related with Jon or to be...
That's how old the baby was that Rhaenyra had, or what was her name?
Rhaella,
sorry.
Yeah. But that's, it's taking a lot of assumptions there, so we don't know.
I think all of us are taking a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't make a theory without them.
The other thing that I have that the timing doesn't exactly work out with is, as Peter was saying earlier, how did Willem Dafoe and Viserys get to Dany eventually? Because we don't know how that all works out. It seems like they were bouncing around a lot, so I guess it's possible, but that's one problem with my theory. And then the other problem I notice is that in The Undying, it's prophesied that she's the child of 3, so that also doesn't make sense. But you could interpret it to mean different things. But yeah, that's basically my theory on R plus L equals D and J.
Okay, so again, Dany has a number of titles, right? She's called Stormborn.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this whole story about how she was born during a very violent storm on Dragonstone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the stories about her when she's... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The stories about her when she's young aren't going to change when they try to, like, make her into a new... Because what they're saying is, like, either that the real Daenerys died or something. They're not going to change the stories about how she was born. They're going to she's going to absorb whatever that kid had going for it.
Okay. So let's say that Rhaella's child was a few months, like say 9 months, younger than this, than Jon and supposedly Dany, right? So they smuggle a child somehow from Tower of Joy to Dragonstone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where were they hiding the baby for 9 months?
In a basket.
I don't know.
Just like Daenerys hid her dragons.
Because Ned immediately heads back to Winterfell with at least one baby, right?
Yeah.
So where does the other baby go?
Well, he goes to Starfall first.
Yeah,
right?
So the assumption I have for this is that...
Ashara could take it.
Yeah. So the assumption I have, like the theory behind it, which doesn't have any literary evidence other than the fact that the Danes like Ned, that he takes both of them to Starfall. He says that he doesn't know what to do with Dany because she looks nothing like him. And then Ashara takes Dany because she miscarried Brandon's child, and now she's a little bit happier. But then when she gets taken away, that causes the proposed suicide, or something else happened and she's not actually dead. But
She's
that's
totally not dead. Just can't.
But
on.
that's kind of my theory, like why the Danes like Ned. They gave Ashara some happiness with a different child that she could take care of.
And then took it away.
Well, Willem Dafoe took it away. Or Viserys.
I'm just saying that switching one baby for another works if they're the same age, But the difference between a newborn and a 9-month-old is
Yeah, but they're not
pretty
showing them off. They're smuggling them out. So once you get to Bravos or wherever
see-
they're going to go,
see,
it
you
doesn't
can't
matter.
you can't just. These are royals, okay? You can't just hide a baby. They're going to be servants. These people are not taking care of the baby themselves.
Not according to Varys,
Right.
you could totally hide a baby.
No, see, the thing is, a very small baby, you can switch with another very small baby. But I'm talking about like switching a newborn with a 9-month-old. That's a big difference. A 9-month-old can walk.
I think I'm also assuming here that Rhaella didn't even have a baby at all. I think there's the chances of her having like another child after so many miscarriages is pretty slim, but that is
She
like
did
a
manage
fault
to have
of
kids
the.
before, so it's possible she could have like another one.
Yeah, but that's 2 out of 10. I mean, the odds are pretty bad. And
also
also
Viserys is
she's also
pretty messed
older
up.
as well, so...
She's had a number of living children who just haven't survived to adulthood.
I mean,
True.
by this time she's got to be pushing 40. Like, it's not an early time for her right now.
No, all
But
those
I
babies
think
were like
it's
1
easier
year
to have
apart.
another baby if you like keep having them. It's easier to just like keep on going until you can't anymore.
Yeah, she was just like constantly pregnant for like 17 years.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have with my theory that I didn't bring up was that Dany constantly thinks of Rhaegar, and she never thinks about Aerys or Rhaella at all. She very much only thinks of Rhaegar and Viserys.
Does she think of Viserys as a father as well?
No.
I think it's just because that she understood that Aerys was mad. She's probably heard the stories that Aerys was mad, right?
She is worried that she has like
and
the
Rhaegar is the one that she can look up to.
Mm-hmm. No, I think
He's
that's I think that there's definitely faults with this theory. I think that this theory is really cool, but yeah. I'm trying to think if I have anything else on this. No, I think that's it. It really, a lot of it has to do with the same reasons that R plus L equals D work as well, with Dany's childhood just being, it not making complete sense with the locations and things like that. So I would say that's pretty much my theory.
Okay, Nadia, did you also have a theory, or were you just playing devil's advocate
No, I'm
today?
just here to shoot them down.
All right, well, I'll go with my theory then, which is a variant of the RLD theory. Basically, I think Rhaegar went to the tournament basically to stage a bloodless coup against his father. He realized, because of the marriage alliances going on with the Starks, the Tullys, the Baratheons, and the Arryns, that something was going to happen if he didn't take action. This is why he didn't include Sir Barristan in his councils, but he included people like Sir Oswell Went, who had to go to the tourney to get that set up and discussed it with his brother. Also, Arthur Dayne was one of Rhaegar's best friends as well.
And it was his wife's cousin. Right?
It was, I believe, that might be true, actually. I don't know. But it seems likely also Ashara may have had just, some information while she was at court and learned things, just the regular goings-on. She'd be knowledgeable. Also, at the Tower of Joy is Sir Gerald Hightower. Now, if you're going to stage a bloodless coup, you're going to want to have that guy on your side, because he can either make sure people who are loyal to you are going to be present, or the other members of the Kingsguard can be sent away on other missions to ensure that this happens. Aerys shows up, things go wrong. Rhaegar wins the tourney, and I think actually, but I gotta admit, I screwed up when we did the Tower of Joy episode, and I said Rhaegar theorized that having a child with Lyanna would bring about the prince that was promised. I was actually typing up notes for this in a coffee shop, and somebody pointed out my screw-up. In the House of the Undying, Rhaegar is shown in a vision to Daenerys with Elia, who's suckling Aegon, and Elia says, are you going to write him a song? And he says, no, he has the song. It's a song of ice and fire. He's the prince that was promised. So Rhaegar actually thought he had fulfilled the prophecy, but Elia wasn't able to have another child. And like somebody who only has, Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, you really want to get the whole trilogy to complete the set. I think he may have made an attempt at bringing in that Northern Alliance by marrying Lyanna in secret. Fast forward a little bit, he gets his ass kicked, things go down, we'll get to the Tower of the Joy right after the 7 versus 3 fight. It's basically just Ned, Howland Reed, the body of Lyanna, and the Sword of the Morning, and I believe it's Daenerys. According to RLJ, he goes south to Starfall to hand back the sword, and I said that didn't sit right with me. In my opinion, shouldn't Ned's most important thing being, hey, how are we going to feed this kid?
Right, get it a wet nurse right away.
Right, get it a wet nurse right away.
Yeah, from Starfall.
Right, and the only...
Starfall's really far away, though.
They probably made
Isn't Starfall from the Tower of Joy?
I mean, what else is
Did we just talk
closer?
about that? I'd assumed that the wet nurse was already there.
They probably didn't starve the baby on the way. I mean, they gave him something to eat.
Well, here's the thing. How do they know
Howland Reed had his little concoctions.
Yeah, unless Howland Reed is the magically
No, all you need
lactating
is a
Cranog
goat.
man,
I mean-
he's not gonna. They're gonna need to find another way to feed that kid. To me, that's why they travel to Starfall, because Ned knew that she was pregnant somehow or had a child. That just seems to make sense to me, and we actually get some disagreement about the results of that. Barristan seemed to think that Ashara had a miscarriage in A Dance with Dragons, but Ashara's daughter had been stillborn, and his fair lady had thrown herself from a tower soon after, mad with grief for the child she had lost, and perhaps the man who had dishonored her at Harrenhal as well. She died never knowing that Sir Barristan had loved her. How could she? He was under the Kingsguard, sworn to celibacy. No good could come from telling her of his feelings. No good came from silence either. If I had unhorsed Rhaegar, crowned Ashara Queen of Love and Beauty, might she have looked to me instead of Stark? So, one way or another, Ned probably knew that Ashara was pregnant and with child, and most likely would have a wet nurse. But ironically enough, Cersei even thinks something slightly different, so there's not exactly a consensus on what went on. And this is from the chapter where Ned is confronting Cersei in the Godswood. Honor, she spat. How dare you play the noble lord with me? What do you take me for? You've a bastard of your own. I've seen him. Who was the mother, I wonder? Some Dornish peasant you raped while her holdfast burned? A whore? Or was it the grieving sister, the Lady Ashara? She threw herself into the sea, I'm told. Why was that? For the brother you slew or the child you stole? Tell me, my honorable Lord Eddard, how are you any different from Robert or Jaime? Cersei's clearly under the impression that Ashara had the child, and that Ned took Jon against her will, which is the opposite of what Barristan believes. Now, this is kind of a dilemma here. If Ashara doesn't have a child, why is there a wet nurse in Starfall? There'd be absolutely no reason for her to be there. If she does have a child, great, it makes sense. Ned leaves the Tower of Joy with Daenerys. He gets to Starfall. He finds Ashara, who has Jon. And we know that Jon was there because Edric Dane verifies that in the Storm of Swords.
Yep.
Which, let me bring up the quote here. Arya missed Jon most of all. Just saying his name made her sad. How do you know about Jon? He's my milk brother. Brother? Arya did not understand. But you're from Dorne.
Yes.
How could you and Jon be blood? Milk brothers, not blood. My lady mother had no milk when I was little, so Wyla had to nurse me. Arya was lost. Who's Wyla? Jon Snow's mother. He never told you? She served us for years and years, since before I was born. Jon never knew his mother, not even her name. Arya gave Ned a wary look. You knew her? Truly? Is he making mock of me? If you lie, I'll punch your face. Wyla was my wet nurse, he repeated solemnly. I swear it on the honor of my house. You have a house? That was stupid. He was a squire. Of course he had a house. Who are you? My lady, Ned looked embarrassed. I'm Edric Dane, the Lord of Starfall.
Yes.
That's really where...
This was the passage I was looking for.
Oh, was it?
He had it the whole
Yeah.
time. He's like, I'm not going to tell
You had
him.
it the whole
My theory will
time.
seem better.
Yeah, it did. That puts Jon at Starfall. If Ned goes there, then yeah, he's looking for a wet nurse. And we know that Wyla goes back to Winterfell with Ned and Jon. Regardless of who, got Ashara Dane pregnant, that's to me that's sort of irrelevant. It's one Stark or another, whether it's Ned or whether it's Brandon, as far as this goes. Now, that does leave the problem of what to do with Daenerys when you're at Starfall. If Ned's heading back north, you've got to do something with Daenerys. You can't just...
Targ-looking baby.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just leave the Targ-looking child. So, Ned would have impressed upon Ashara, hey, get the hell out of here. Go overseas, disappear. She fakes her death, and then she travels to Essos. Around this time, we also have, the events on Dragonstone. I think Rhaella probably did have a child on Dragonstone, and then Willem Darry and Viserys flee Dragonstone to go to Braavos. Now, we know that Rhaella's children aside from Viserys and Rhaegar, haven't done so well. So I don't think the child survives the trip. It may have died, at birth, or on the way, and they just sort of dropped it over the side of the boat or whatever.
Oh my god.
Let the deep ones take it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm totally with you on this. I also would think, even if they got to Bravos, what a terrible place to raise an infant. It's disgusting and damp and cold and gross, and it could die of a million things there.
What the hell are you talking about? Bravos is pretty awesome where they were going. They were going to the House of the Sea Lord, and that's where...
JK. LOL.
Yeah.
Okay, so please continue with the theory. I mean, I'm waiting to see who you think Ashara Dane is.
Sure. So here's what happens. They get to the Sea Lord's house, and Oberyn shows up. He cuts that deal to wed off Viserys and one of the daughters of the Martell family. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. But this is why Daenerys isn't mentioned in that deal. Now, I want to bring up a quote about Doran Martell, who is sort of like the brains behind the operation of Dorne. Doran is a cautious man, a reasoned man, subtle, deliberate, even indolent to a degree. He is a man who weighs the consequences of every word and every action. And that's Tywin Lannister talking about Doran. So clearly Doran's someone that Tywin respects and maybe even fears a little bit. And then in Dance of Dragons, Doran's also talking about how he and Oberyn used to work together. I'm not blind nor deaf. I know you all believe me weak, frightened, feeble. Your father knew me better. Oberyn was ever the viper, deadly, dangerous, unpredictable. No man dared tread on him. I was the grass, pleasant, complacent, sweet-smelling, swaying with every breeze. Who fears to walk upon the grass? But it is the grass that hides the viper from his enemies and shelters him until he strikes. So, Daenerys being excluded from this deal seems to be a massive oversight that someone like Dorne wouldn't have missed. I mean, and also, why wouldn't Sir Willem Darry exclude Daenerys from the deal? To me, that just seems wrong. Sir Willem has really gone to bat for House Targaryen, being the loyalist that he is. He should be trying to ensure the eventual return to power for them, and, the well-being of all the remaining royal family members. The only way he doesn't do that is if Daenerys isn't there. House Martell is clearly the best bet at this point in time for that to happen. Penning her in as sort of a plan B makes a lot of sense, considering it was Viserys and we kind of all know what happened to him. It also begs the question, when does Daenerys show up? That, I think, is something that we just sort of have to leave up to going to be revealed in the future by George. I don't think that's something that we can actually plan out. And everybody keeps bringing up the lemon tree. There's no lemon trees in Bravos, blah, 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 blah. Here's the problem that I have with that. They're staying with the Sea Lord of Bravos, who witnesses this marriage pact. The Sea Lord has a menagerie. We know that from Syrio. So he's into collecting all these rare and exotic animals and things like that. It only kind of makes sense to me that he's going to bring on some rare exotic plants that may not be native. Daenerys being able to look out the window and see like a tree, sure, that makes sense. It also might be a nice little reminder to Sir Willem of the secret deal that's in place with Dorne if they just happen to drop off a lemon tree for him to...
What's your take on why
Okay, so where
Dorne
did Ashara go? Where did Ashara go?
Ashara?
Yeah.
Ashara eventually makes her way to Bravos with Daenerys. She gets there after Martell has left. It's going to take her time because she has to travel in secret, etc., etc. She's traveling with a child, all those reasons. Daenerys is probably still a young child, an infant, probably not going to have a lot of solid core memories. Or we do have one problem about Daenerys, though. Ashara shows up and says, hey, I've got Rhaegar's daughter that he had with Lyanna Stark. Nobody knows they got married except basically Rhaegar and Lyanna. So technically, from Sir Willem's point of view and from Viserys' point of view, Daenerys is a bastard child. The nickname Stormborn probably came not because of a raging storm that happened on Dragonstone, which may have actually happened, probably happened. It's a shot at her actual birth, being bastard-born. Look at Robert's child, Edric Storm. So this seems to be kind of...
It's because he's born in the Stormland.
Right, exactly. And the Tower of Joy is not too far from it.
Except that she was born... Except that she would have been born in Dorne, so she would have been a sand.
He's right, it's close to the Stormlands, though.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Whatever, it was in Dorne, it would have been sand. Doesn't work.
Well,
What
But who do you think Ashara is? But then do you have a theory
Stormborn
for
sounds a
where
lot cooler
Ashara
than
is?
Sandborn. So
But what I'm questioning is, do you have a theory for where Ashara went after delivering Danny to Willem Dafoe?
after she brings him, at this point, yeah, I think she just decides to disappear into Essos. She can't go back to Westeros. If she goes back to Westeros, one, she's famous, two, she's a noble, and three, she's hot looking. So she's gonna stick out, and people are gonna find out that she's alive and she didn't off herself, and that's gonna give away the whole deceit. It's also gonna put her own child, Jon, at risk, and it's also gonna expose Ned for committing high treason. This is why Ned flips out when Catelyn asks him in bed about Ashara Dane.
If she really was Brandon and Ashara's child, why wouldn't Ned talk about that? Why would it be so taboo?
Why wouldn't he talk about
Exactly.
it with whom?
If John was Brandon and Ashara's child, right? Why would he have to conceal his identity?
Because if he reveals who Jon is the child of, it casts some doubt upon what's going on. So
Wow.
Jon basically says
he doesn't have to reveal Ashara's identity at all. He just has to say this is Brandon's bastard.
but he doesn't do that. If he says it's Brandon's child,
Why wouldn't he do that? If it was Brandon's child, why
Because it's
would
now heir to the throne if it was.
Yeah, no.
Or not the throne, to the...
But why
to-
would it be?
to-
Bastards have no right to the throne.
But he
Because
could have a
that's
higher
pretty well
claim
accepted.
than Ned's children.
Exactly.
Because Brandon's
No,
the...
but why would he? He's not. It's very clear. Children born
Bastards can't
outside of wedlock do not inherit.
right?
No, that's
So-
right. I think that it just may have been upsetting to Catelyn if that were the case.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It puts
but also-
his own children's claim in jeopardy to Winterfell.
But it does. But it doesn't. The precedence is very, very clear. I mean, children born out of wedlock have no rights at all. The whole reason he conceals John's identity is because he is committing treason
Yes.
by hiding John.
Yes.
That's
but,
the reason
but,
he keeps it secret.
Yes, but if he exposes that Jon is Ashara's child, the reason for her suicide goes away. She had a
See, but
miscarriage
he
and her
doesn't have to say that it's. He doesn't have to reveal who his mother is.
And he doesn't.
It's just Brandon's bastard. That's all he has to say. It could be any woman.
He doesn't though.
Brandon wasn't
Right.
exactly known
And
for
if
being.
if Brandon is the guy that dishonored Ashara at Harrenhal, then
Nobody
someone
knows
is
that. Nobody knows that except for
Barristan.
Barristan Selmy, who will never say anything.
You don't know that.
I'm
You
gonna
don't know
say
he's
this.
never going to say anything.
Yes.
Barristan
I will say this.
Selmy's not saying anything because he thinks Ashara had a miscarriage of a daughter, not because things came to light. Barristan might put two and two together. Ned wants to bury this and keep this secret buried. He does not want any questions coming up that can even remotely link him in some way back to Ashara. Maybe she is, maybe not. That's why he's keeping his mouth shut. He doesn't want to cause any trouble, and he wants his own life to go a little bit smoother, and he wants to leave this in the past and get beyond it. So
thing-
revealing who Jon's parentage is, yes, that puts the whole thing at risk, and it exposes his level of treason.
I'm gonna add this. I'm gonna add this ring.
Too much of a stretch.
I think another reason that he doesn't say anything in that, you know how he always thinks about all the time about how this all should have been Brandon's, I wasn't supposed to be this, like he was the older brother kind of stuff. He feels bad and stuff for the way that Brandon got, burned alive and stuff like that. And so for then it to come out that he had a bastard and stuff like that, I think Ned kind of wants to preserve his good memory a little bit. If it came out that, he actually fathered a bastard, he could instead do the honorable thing in Ned's mind, which is just say, oh no, it's actually my bastard, because I'm alive and can defend my honor still.
By the sounds of it, Brandon should have had a lot of bastards. I wonder why he doesn't.
Didn't
I
he
mean,
have
he
one with
could
Lady
have.
Hornley?
George does, and he never acknowledged them.
George R. R. Martin did say at one point that Brandon does have bastards
Oh.
around.
Yeah, at the wall? What?
Dude, for real. I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
So
No, but seriously, I think this is way too far fetched. I mean, having Daenerys be at Starfall and then taken to Bravos and then.
why by a boat? That's
think
too
it's
far
just-
fetched.
But then where did
Starfall's by the ocean, so it's not hard. It's not hard to smuggle somebody out by the ocean.
Another question I would
Yeah,
have is why doesn't Oberyn
that's
think
fine.
anything? Why doesn't Oberyn think anything of there suddenly being a Daenerys, whereas when he was making the pact there was no
Exactly.
Daenerys?
Exactly.
Well,
There must.
when
Okay, so
Oberyn goes to Bravos, I'm sure that conversation came up like, hey, what happened to the queen was pregnant when she went to Dragonstone, right? Yeah, that didn't turn out so well. The child died. Oh, okay. I guess it's just Viserys.
Yeah, but what happens after that when he finds out there is a Daenerys? You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden there is
yeah,
a Daenerys, and he's not like, what is going on here? She was supposed to be dead. Why wouldn't he use that against her when he wants to get his son married to her?
Yeah.
Well, it's after the fact, and also, Oberyn's also dead at this point. It's Quentyn, and then the emissary that Quentyn sends
but
off to
Oberyn
Oh, did I say
Daenerys.
Oberyn?
Whatever Oberyn knows, Doran knows as well.
Yeah, Oberyn's like, sort of dead.
Dead in
But
the
he would have
ground.
told Doran whatever
But
he
Doran,
knew.
exactly, Doran Martell would know. And see, the reason why Dany was omitted from the treaty was probably because Villari did not want to commit all his eggs to one basket.
Right, if you commit them both to Dorne, you don't have any other alliances with the other
Exactly.
child.
Well, considering nobody else showed up or offered him any help the entire time that they were living in
But you
Bravos,
couldn't
they had
have
no
thought
other
that nobody
alliances
doesn't show up,
anyway.
Because see, the Tyrells were sort of Targaryen loyalists. So there could have been a potential alliance there.
He just might
So
not
he
have had
was
a chance
probably
to get any
just
other
waiting.
alliance.
Exactly, he was probably just for another one to show up.
I don't think so. I don't think that's a thing that Quentin is going to let slide. He's not. He's too sharp. He's not going to let something slide like that. He's going to be all about that, and he's going to have that set up. He's too much of a careful plotter, planner, and schemer in the game to let some obviously glaring detail slip through his fingers, unless it's a detail he was unaware of. That's the only way that she doesn't end up with her name being part of that marriage deal or a separate marriage deal. That's why when they bring it to her, she's just like, oh, wow, this was for my brother. I'm nowhere mentioned in this. You guys are shit out of luck. You picked the wrong horse or whatever.
Yeah, but I guess
so-
what I'm saying is Doran never mentioned that Daenerys just popped up out of nowhere. You think that would have been in one of his conversations with your Arianne or Arya Hota?
If at the time of the treaty, Daenerys was not there, wouldn't they ask if Rhaella was already dead? Rhaella died during childbirth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So everyone would know sort of the result of that delivery, right? Whether there was a baby, whether it was alive or dead, right? They would know. Because Viserys and Willem Darry only left after Rhaella had died.
Yeah.
Right? So any baby that had been born would have been with them.
Right.
Right?
It doesn't mean
Oberyn
it doesn't.
comes-
It doesn't mean the child makes it to Bravos. A newborn traveling at
yes,
sea.
exactly. That's what we're trying to say. Oberyn comes to make a treaty, right? So there's no baby. Suppose that baby is dead and there is no baby, right?
Right.
And he makes a deal, and suddenly there is a baby. So where did this baby come from? Wouldn't Dorne ask questions? Why would they think? Why would they even consider?
Send somebody out to
Dany's
renegotiate the deal.
legitimacy? Exactly. No. Why wouldn't they question Dany's legitimacy? As because they don't know where this person has come.
Well, Viserys legitimizes her later on after she shows up. So when she shows up initially, she's still a bastard-born child as far as they can tell. And then he, being the king, legitimizes her. And he doesn't legitimize her as his niece. He
Legitimizes her and then announces it to Westeros? Really? I mean, I find that kind of hard to believe.
No, if Rhaella's child dies in transit, then Daenerys can just sort of fill into that new role of being Viserys' younger sister. So it's not like it's a surprise. It's not like there's anything shocking. And Oberyn probably goes, I don't know, that's what they told me to Quentin. And Quentin's probably like, you fucking moron. Why? I told you, get both of them. They told me one died. So I did the best I could. Look, they're probably not going to pursue it any further. Why bother? Look, you got Viserys. You got the important one. The deal is done. Let's move forward as planned. So they probably didn't have a whole, reason to keep sending ships back and forth to Bravos. If you do that, sooner or later, Robert's going to notice, and then he's literally going to come bring the hammer down.
But it's just a boat ride, dude.
Yeah, it is. But if it's more important people taking boat rides as opposed to someone who's supposedly committed suicide and dead and out of the picture, then it's more noticeable.
I don't think anybody cares what Oberyn's out doing, because he's always doing crazy shit. He's like, I'm just going to Bravos. I want to fight with some
He doesn't
water
care.
dancers.
He just does what he wants.
Right. Anyway, I'm not saying your theory's wrong. I'm just
I'm
trying
just
to
saying
answer
it's
questions.
wrong.
Okay, she's saying it's wrong. I don't have any evidence to
I
prove
think
it
it's
wrong.
completely and
And you still
100%
haven't
correct.
convinced me. It's too complicated, I think.
I mean, it's primarily circumstantial, whether it's true or not. I think there's good points to it, but it
I
is
think all theories
circumstantial.
are circumstantial until we get
Well,
proof.
like,
Very
Exactly.
there is literary evidence for R plus L equals J, like, as far as foreshadowing goes. But yeah, you're right, it is circumstantial.
He's never come out and said anything, so until he does, we're always going to be wondering, and we're going to fit our theories to fit the text. So
True.
all our theories are going to be like, well, you can't prove me wrong. It's like, well, yeah, because you fit it to the text.
Right.
So I want to say most of our theories have come out after all the books we have so far, except for maybe World.
Shaggydog, I'm totally with you. I think you nailed it. You said it better than I could.
So you're saying 2/5 of this call is on board.
Yeah, I mean, if we even want to go over the House of the Undying stuff, we can go over that as well. And actually, that's actually worth mentioning because, there is the whole rose out of the wall thing. And actually, I think it was Wargasm who said he wanted an explanation on that. So just really, really quick, when Dany goes through that whole thing, she's seeing a lot of different visions. The first one is when she sees the, 4 dwarfs savaging the naked woman. The common interpretation of that is that it's the War of the Five Kings. Because I'm pretty sure Renly might be dead at this point. I could be wrong on that, but I think it might actually refer to that original alliance of Stark, Tully, and Baratheon and Aeron that won the war that put Robert on the throne. So they're sort of getting to have their way.
And the woman is the throne?
The woman is Westeros, not the throne.
Oh, okay. Well, same thing, yeah.
Yeah. Then she sees a room with carved animal faces and a window with a lemon tree and Sir Willem Derry, which is, in Bravos, so that makes that whole
Maybe.
information. Yeah. That's Bravos.
It's
That's
hypothetically
Bravos.
in Bravos.
When Arya goes to kill the Sea Lord in the next book, she's gonna walk past a lemon tree and it's gonna confirm it's Bravos. So
Until that happens, I still think that Dany was raised in Dorne, and nothing will convince me otherwise.
okay. And then next in the house, she gets the vision of the Mad King shouting, Let him be king over charred bones, cooked meat, he said to a man below him. Let him be king of ashes. Again, it's another, point building up to the future for Daenerys. It's sort of going over her history. Then we get the vision of Rhaegar with Elia, where
that last one was him deciding to make all the wildfire.
Exactly.
And he was going to burn the whole kingdom, yeah.
Exactly. And then we get the vision of Rhaegar and Elia, and who's nursing Aegon. He has a song, the man replied. He's the prince that was promised, and his is a song of ice and fire. He looked up to her when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing there beyond the door. There must be one more, he said, though. Whether he was speaking to her or the woman in bed, she could not say. The dragon has 3 heads. So that would make her the 3rd head, or the 3rd child of Rhaegar as well.
Can you imagine Elia there? Like, really?
Not necessarily. He's just telling Dany. Maybe he's just informing Dany, I have a 3rd child, you have another nephew, go and find him.
Yeah, ironically enough, Sir Barristan recalls that, or it might have been Connington, he says something like, the Maester's told Elia she's never going to have another child if she wants to live. So yeah, you guys are probably right. She's probably like, dude, this last one nearly killed me.
And Rhaegar's like, it's a chance I gotta take. The prophecy demands it.
Then she sees the defeat of Rhaegar at Ruby Ford, which I think is actually saying Lyanna's name because it's a name that she wouldn't have recognized herself. She knows enough of her family history that she would have, recognized anyone else's name, but Lyanna would be different. And then we get the vision of the cloth dragon, which is probably fake Aegon, a stone beast breathing shadow fire from a stone tower, and then we get the vision of her silver horse, a corpse in the prow of a ship, and then the blue flower that grew from a chink in a wall of ice and filled the air with sweetness. Now, the rest of these prophecies and, visions really do kind of point back at her prior history, her, growing up, the missing parts of her story that she's unaware of. And let's face it, if you want to mention somebody in the North, well, what's the most recognizable thing in the North? I don't know. How about the giant 700-foot wall of ice? And
Word.
and the blue rose is an association with Lyanna, so I mean that would be the easiest way to point it out. I mean, if it was just like blue roses, I don't know, maybe somebody in Highgarden? I have no clue what this is. So,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it also gives George a chance to mislead readers into thinking it's a reference to Jon, but I think it's actually a reference to Lyanna being Daenerys' mother, because she's completely confused by the whole event, because she's still convinced as she's going through the House of the Undying, she's the daughter of Rhaella. She hasn't figured it out yet, and this is one thing that continues to be a theme through Martin's writings, is the characters fuck up a lot. They make mistakes, and they don't see it. We as the readers get the chance to go through it several
Read it
times.
again and again and again and again.
Can I interrupt for a second? I opened Westeros.org, and their interpretation is of this line: a blue flower grew from a chink in the wall of ice, and filled the air with sweetness. Their interpretation says, an image of major importance to many readers. This vision, direct connection between Lyanna Stark, who loved blue roses, the song of Bale the Bard, who eloped with Lord Stark's daughter, leaving a blue rose in her place and had it by her, and Jon Snow, who is on the wall. If the reading is correct, it is one of the strongest pieces of evidence in support of Jon being the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark.
Okay. Do you know what you call...
It even does. Bale the Bard.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is he's just saying that the wall is symbolizing the North in general, and that the blue rose that grows from it is her mother's, not Jon.
Right.
It symbolizes her mother because she's going through things in the past. That's what he's saying.
It's Jon.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Not Nadia. Let me put it to you this way. We just had a game over here called the Super Bowl. Do you know what you call a bunch of fans who thought the Carolina Panthers were going to win that game are?
I have...
Shaggydog.
Let's talk about cricket instead.
And keep in mind, throughout her entire trip, she gets continuously is referred to as Mother of Dragons, Bride of Fire, which are pretty, straightforward and obvious. But they also call her the Daughter of Death and Slayer of Lies as well. Daughter of Death seems pretty straightforward. Her parents are dead, Rhaegar and Lyanna.
Everyone she ever knew was dead.
Pretty much.
Eris and Rhael are also dead, so...
This is true. But Slayer of Lies, that's the big one. What lies is she slaying? If it's the lies that were initially made to get her to where she is, then that makes a lot more sense, because it reveals her past, it reveals her history, it reveals who she actually is. There is no other lies that she could be slaying, as far as I can tell. Ned and Ashara were the ones who initially, did that lie, and then it got expanded on by Viserys.
I mean, you could also say that Slayer of Lies means that she conquered Viserys and all of his lies about him being the drag, or he just told her lies half the time if you
like
think
that's
about
a
it.
lemon tree. That wasn't a lemon tree, dude. That was an oak.
I mean, if you subscribe to a lot of the lemon trees, Dany not being Rhael's daughter, he is literally telling her lies. On the flip side, if we think that her parentage, like Aerys and Rhael are actually her parents, he could still be telling her lies of that, like, he's the dragon, you need to listen to me, don't hurt me or I'll hurt you, type things.
I don't know. I think it would be more to the point that if he's lying about her origin story, like, oh yeah, you're my younger sister,
You definitely don't have a better claim than I do.
Exactly, especially after I marry a Dornish girl and we make Dornish law the law of the land. Absolutely no chance do you have of sitting that throne. Plus, he doesn't even treat her like a sister. He treats her very much like property. Now, given to be fair, Tywin does the same thing with his children, but that's why he's probably not too concerned about selling her off to Drogo.
I don't think we should take Viserys' behavior as proof of anything. He's crazy. He's a psychopath. He does not care anything for his sister. So
His niece,
his sister.
who was born in bastardy, who doesn't really count. He only counts because he
His sister who
legitimized her.
killed his mother on the way out.
He does say, like, you don't marry a dragon. Like, doesn't he say something about a dragon doesn't marry a beast or something like that?
Yeah, he talks down about marrying like less than noble blood, basically, which
And it is weird that he would marry if his sister wasn't pure blood, that he would be like, you can marry to him because you're just a bastard, but I could never do that.
Hell, he says he'd let Drogo's whole Khalasar fuck her if it got him back to Westeros. So he is easily an ends justify the means sort of guy, but there's like no respect for any drop of royal blood that she actually has, and that's probably why, because it's in his view muddled with commoner blood.
Yeah, I like the idea of there being like an Ashara Dane Stark, like a Dane Stark child, because then you get the whole like there's theories that Dawn is like used to be Lightbringer and the Danes are the ones who carried the sword, and because of the whole made from a falling star or whatever, or a dying star, whatever it was, they're saying that like maybe it was a Dornish woman that was slain with it to create Lightbringer, and that's why it's like it's slayed a star, that kind of thing. And they took it back after Lightbringer was used to fight off the others. So it's nice, like, symmetry if there's a Dane and a Stark mix that's up at the wall. I don't think that's the case, because they're like an old ass family too, that have like the first blood in them or something.
Yeah, they're an ancient family that have been around for a long, long time.
Yeah, but I think Lightbringer is defined as a very different kind of sword. It has it has this heat to it.
Yeah,
whereas Dawn is.
Yeah, it's just there's more to the theory.
Sword. It's just very.
It's not a normal sword.
It's not a normal sword, but it's sort of like Valyrian steel, but like a different material. But it's not hot, which is sort of the main characteristic of Lightbringer. It doesn't glow.
Their theory was it was dragon glass, or made of dragon glass, and dragon glass burns, and it isn't consumed. And that's why.
But dragon glass, the problem with that is dragon glass doesn't do very well in a fight against actual real steel.
But they were saying that that's
apart, like glass.
It's in the theory that that's why they had to temper it and had to like hammer it into like steel into it, and now it isn't consumed by the fire, and it's a convoluted theory. And I'm sorry, I can't think of everything right now, but it's a decent theory. And I'm sure it sounds way more crazy when I just try to spurt it out off the top of my head than if I had it written out on a page.
No, it sounds more solid that way.
So I guess where I stand now at the end, I don't really like to like discount theories when there's some evidence to them.
But you don't believe that R plus X is equal to D.
I don't,
right?
But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I believe R plus L equals J. I think it makes the most literary sense. I think it makes for a solid story. But I don't discount R plus L equals D. I don't think it could be impossible, or that Jon and Dany could be twins. I think that'd be really neat. I think there's neat stories behind them all, but just R plus L equals J makes the most sense to me.
See, this is one thing I don't like to hear, because everybody keeps arguing like, oh, it doesn't make literary sense, it doesn't make literary sense. Every time, it's like, okay, fine, it may not make literary sense, but it's building the mystery. It's, enabling Daenerys to hatch dragons and to return, House Targaryen to its former glory. I mean, to me, that's what the Prince that was promised should do. They should do something significant. They should do something, phenomenal, something that, your house hasn't been able to do. What has Jon really done that's been, mystical or magical or
that's
powerful?
The thing. He will do something. And see, the prince that was promised was supposed to come from Aerys and Rhaella's line, right? So Dany is their daughter.
No,
she's
their granddaughter. That's still of the line. Yeah. You don't cut the line off one generation down. That's not how that works. That's a real short line if you cut it off there.
No, but
well,
what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter if Dany is Rhaegar and Lyanna's daughter, or Aerys and Rhaella's daughter. What matters is that she is probably the prince that was promised, right? Her parents. It doesn't matter if Aerys and Rhaella are her parents or her grandparents. She can still be the prince that was promised, right?
Sure, why not?
And she's brought the dragons back. And Jon, I'm assuming, will eventually become Azor Ahai, and he will do something important. We just haven't seen it yet.
So, unrelated to our theories, but kind of related. Anybody, obviously you don't subscribe to it, otherwise you would have brought it up here, but the theory that Mira was like John's twin or something, and Howland took her.
Oh, it's written down in the notes.
Yeah, because they both have curly hair in the show.
I don't remember all the stuff. Was it written down in the notes? I didn't read that part.
Yeah, it is actually in the notes. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Mira
because
and
we were
John
wondering
are
where
the
Howland
same age.
That's about it.
I don't see how that would impact the story any. She kind of seems like she's out of it, but who knows?
Plus, there's no fire.
Right,
It'd
she
be
has
mud.
green eyes. She can never have green eyes.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. I think a lot of
Song
that comes from
The
like the
Song of
show.
Ice and Mud.
I do too.
The odds of Lyanna dying in childbirth seem more likely if she had twins. I think people died in childbirth a lot in those days, whether it was one baby or two.
In those days, these days
Yeah,
don't exist.
I mean, that's why I didn't even bring it up with her having twins, because regardless, I think it's like people die from childbirth.
Yeah, I mean, like Tyrion's
Yeah,
mother died from having him. She didn't die from twins.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the little tiny, crazy-looking baby that killed her.
But then Dany had a very crazy looking baby herself and she survived. So
Right.
it's luck.
I don't know if you'd call that luck, but I guess. I mean-
Well, she was lucky to live, not lucky to lose her child.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the clarification.
What did you think I was saying?
I was just being snarky. I don't know. The notion that Mira is like a twin with Jon is kind of an interesting one. I mean, it does give Howland Reed something to do for a few years. Well, I don't really know what the hell he does at Greywater Watch. Just sort of hang around and
It paddles.
Yeah.
Gotta move that castle.
He holds the neck. I mean, he holds the neck, which is the main entry into the north. That's
He doesn't really hold it, though. Greywater Watch isn't at the neck.
He's there, he's watching,
Yeah, they're like shooting poisonous arrows at people who take the castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't it Moat Cailin that actually holds the route north?
Yeah.
That's why they fortify that, not
Yeah.
Greywater Watch. Like,
Well, you can't fortify something that's moving.
well, you can fortify it. Aircraft carriers are fortified, but just
Yeah.
I don't know. To go on what Scott was saying about the whole literary sense thing, I'm with you on that, because I can still see, like, people say this would make it not make literary sense. It could still make.
Hello?
I think
Did
it
we
doesn't
lose him?
make literary sense. I'm just saying, probably because I'm already subscribed to the R plus L equals J, that my head makes that make more literary sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a big part of it, is when you suggest a theory. I mean, even our own poll, that showed 75% of the people think RLJ is right. So, I mean, when you suggest a theory that goes against, the common consensus, well, yeah, people are going to be like, oh no, you're batshit crazy. That can't possibly be right. It has to be Jon. Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of, popularist belief in it that this must be right because so many people believe in it. It's like a mob mentality for a theory.
Yeah, and I mean, I've chose the path of least resistance my whole life, so I'm going to keep going with the R plus L equals J.
Are there any other theories?
There's lots of other theories, but about this?
Aside from the young Griff one, which works very similar to the R plus L equals, YG, where Ashara takes off and she becomes Septa Lemore.
Oh
She's
yeah,
not
we didn't.
anymore.
There are Ashara
She's
theories
not.
we didn't really talk about. Is who people think Ashara is if she's still
See,
alive.
Ashara can't be Septa Lemore because Ashara had purple eyes, which are very distinctive, right? And then when Tyrion is on the boat with Septa Lemore,
He's not looking at her
looks
eyes.
but he looks at her very, very closely, and he gives quite a detailed description of her. And I think if she had purple eyes, that would have been mentioned.
I think the only
it-
parallel to them is that they're both hot.
I actually think
Right?
So hot.
that Septa Lemore. I actually think that Septa Lemore might be Tyne Sand's mother.
Who?
Ooh.
Is Tyne Sand, who is one of Oberyn Martell's bastards.
Oh,
She is basically the daughter of a Septa. And Tyrion, when Septa Lemore is taking a bath, he notices that she has stretch marks on her stomach because of pregnancy. So
used
I
that
think
cocoa
it's
butter.
not just me. People have theorized that she might be Tyne's mother.
Wow, that's just Doran keeping his eye on everything. He's like, oh yeah, there's a young Griff. I got a lady on that.
Hey, keep your bases covered. Whichever one seems like they're going to win, he has enough. He has enough sand snakes for all of them.
He's like, wait, there's a Daenerys now? Quentin, go get that one.
Here, bring the scribble of a letter. That might get you somewhere.
What do you guys think of the whole Ashara is Quaithe thing?
I don't think we're ever going to know whether or not it is.
Nobody thinks that like me?
I think it's a possibility.
I think it's a possibility, but I like with a lot of theories that we have, I feel like that one won't get answered, like, definitively.
I don't feel like Ashara is magical, and Quaithe seems magical in some way.
Yeah.
She just has a glass candle.
Yeah, she keeps showing up in places where she shouldn't.
And disappearing.
Glass candle.
Definitely.
Glass candle.
Definitely
Glass
magical.
candle. Dude, Ashara totally has, what's it called? Quaithe totally has a glass candle, whether it's Ashara or not. She definitely has one.
Yeah, that is actually true. She does mention that the candles are burning, so and
They like send dreams through glass candles, right?
exactly, and appear in visions and things like that.
Can you project yourself?
Probably.
through a glass cannon?
You can.
yeah.
Isn't it like a palantir where you can like there's like a looking stone?
Yeah,
It-
Palantir
yeah.
and
That's-
glass candles
that's
are
what I
basically
get.
the same.
I think I actually very recently listened to one of the Lord of the Rings episodes, and we were discussing that basically with the Palantir you can't project yourself. We were discussing that about Saruman actually, and I just think the same thing about glass candles. You just sort of look into them and see stuff.
Yeah, the glass candles work differently because there's a scene in Dance where Daenerys is sort of just hanging out in the gardens, and Quaithe just randomly shows up, and she's like, "How the hell did you get here?" She's like, "The guards would have seen you coming," and Quaithe says, "Oh, I showed up through a different way." So it's implied. She
But she
certainly
doesn't say that it's through a glass candle.
No, but she implies it. So she's not
She
all
doesn't
like.
say it.
But they have talked about people being able to like get in people's heads through glass candles.
Okay.
There is some textual evidence for that. I know that.
So you're not exactly projecting yourself. You're just invading somebody's mind.
Sure. What's the
But the
difference?
thing
If I
for
perceive it,
projecting
it's real to me.
Yeah.
Because when the handmaiden comes out, she's like, "Who are you talking to?" Because she didn't see her.
Right.
Okay.
Also, with the Ashara being Quaithe thing, there's that whole part where the other vision that I think it's the last time Quaithe appears to her when she's in the sea of the grass or whatever, with about to be captured by the Dothraki again. Don't the like stars start talking to her, right? And it's Quaithe. Ashara, like the Danes are like Starfall and stuff. It's like stars. Ooh. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. They're definitely.
Yeah, and she gives her that to go north you must go south prophecy or prediction or advice.
Yeah. I just remember it being like the stars started talking to her. She like looked at the stars and it was Quaithe, and it was like then her started giving the prophecy. So I don't know.
It's a nice.
So that made me think of the Danes a little bit for some reason, because everything makes me think of the Danes.
I don't know.
Anyways.
As far as Quaithe being Ashara, I mean, I suppose it is possible. Quaithe doesn't seem to have any motivations. I mean, when Daenerys does show up at Korth, which is where they meet them, Pyat Pri and what's the other guy? Zon, whatever his name is, Dohaxis? Zondaxis. Thanks. Yeah, they certainly have their own motivations, and Quaithe wanted to get Daenerys out of there. If she has a motivation for helping out Daenerys, it's not quite certain yet. If it is a Sharadane, I suppose that with Daenerys going back, conquering Westeros, I guess that would allow her to return home and reveal that, hey, I'm Ashara, I'm back. What happened to my boy Jon? I can't wait to let him know that he's the rightful heir to Starfall. Which would actually make a really hilarious reveal. Like, oh shit, he's freezing his balls off in the north, and he's taking a vow that stops
Why
him.
would he be heir to Starfall? Edric Dane is heir, isn't he?
Yeah, but he might
Edric
not
Dane is actually Lord of Starfall.
for now, because they may not know that Jon is.
No, but he's like his.
John would still be a bastard. He
father
wouldn't be able
was-
to inherit.
Yeah, and Edric's father was Ashara's brother.
Oh, that's a good point. But
it's Dorne. If she's older,
is she older than her brother? Because if she's older, then she's the first in line. That's
I
how
don't
Dornish
think so.
succession works.
not that it
she's
matters. I don't think that'll ever happen.
I
to her.
think she's much younger than her brother.
Okay.
I don't know. I think if it does happen, I can just imagine Howland Reed showing up, after it's all said and done, and, John's probably dying of his wounds, and Howland is like, John, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I just saved the world. Apparently I'm Azor Ahai. No, you're not. You're Ashara Dane and Brandon's bastard child. What? Who told you you're Azor Ahai? And then he's like, what? I should be Lord of Winterfell? And, yeah, you probably should have grown up in Starfall. That's what you were supposed to happen.
The Danes having having Dawn, if that was Lightbringer, it actually brings some credence to him being Azor Ahai if he ever gets it. If he was Ashara's
Dawn
bastard.
is not Lightbringer. It's not.
Why not? That's actually that's a very
that's
clever...
actually
Because again, the description of Lightbringer is very, very different from the description that we have of Dawn.
For instance, in the dream, when Ned has the dream of the 7 against 3, it says like that Dawn was like glowing, or it was like lighted up and stuff. Like there's a quote in there about it in that.
And Jamie talks about it being super
glowing
sharp.
because it's a very light in color and the sun was probably reflecting off it. But Lightbringer is supposed to like give off like actual heat.
Okay, well
back when it was being used as Lightbringer it was, now magic is gone. And it's no longer on fire anymore like it used to be.
Yeah, that's true. Its power could have waned, its batteries are low, or whatever you want to call it.
Maybe bring that bitch up to the wall and it's up.
Nobody's stabbed somebody they loved in a while, so it needs to recharge, I guess. No, actually, that would actually lend a little more credence to John's legitimacy, because if John is going to be Azor Ahai, then it would make sense that he would end up with, a blade like Dawn. Maybe
John is going to get Dark Sister. Why would he need Dawn?
Dark Sister? Oh,
I think Mira's a lot more likely to get Dark Sister than John is.
That would be awesome, actually.
Dark Sister is lost right now, right?
No,
no idea where it is.
Bloodraven had it.
Bloodraven probably has it.
Bloodraven was the last one to have it, and so if he took it with him north to the wall and then beyond, then it's probably just like laying on the floor in that cave somewhere. and actually, ironically enough, Mira was complaining. And funny enough, Mira was complaining about the sword when she went out of the crypts of Winterfell. Like, it's too big, it was too heavy. So yeah, so if Dark Sister's up there, then
I would love it if Mira got the sword.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I think it'd be better if they just
taped
it to Summer's head and he just ran around and poked things with it.
And then if Bran would then warg into Hodor, and then Hodor and Mira would go out and fight the others in the snow with some Dragonglass and Dark Sister.
Oh, yeah. That'd be so awesome.
So, are we good on the R plus L equals question mark?
I think
so. I think we've covered it.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything else?
No.
All right. Bring this thing home, Scott.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining. If you want to continue this conversation, this will be up on a podcast of iceandfire.com. Join us on the forums, Vassals of Kingsgrave, and we'll love to hear from you there.
Vassals of Kingsgrave.wordpress. Blah, blah, blah.
Sorry, it's podcastofIceandFire.com and / I think something.
And the
Just
website
search
will be okay.
a podcast of Ice and Fire, and then click on that. And then join the forums, and you'll be able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, or go to LGMTFY. Let me Google that for you, and type in Vassals of Kingsgrave, and then just email that to people you know.
All right, well, bye,